Chapter 633. When the curtain of night was about to descend, Ji Tianqing found Su Er's hiding place. Last night, Su had sent people to post over 60,000 notices in the city. After finishing this matter, she found an old courtyard in the northern part of the city and hid there. Today, Central Continent City was abuzz with activity. She hid in the courtyard the entire day, silently waiting for news. When Ji Tianqing found her, she was first filled with shock and disbelief. However, she quickly calmed down, roughly guessing the reason. I hid so well, how could Ji Tianqing find me so quickly? It seems like he still doesn't trust me enough. He definitely left some kind of imprint on my body. Or perhaps, his influence is extremely great, so he could easily find my tracks. Regardless of the result, it made Su Er feel a bit of restraining fear towards Ji Tianqing's methods. Ji Tianqing saw that her attitude was a bit vigilant and restraining fear, so he went straight to the point. Miss Su Er, you've done very well. Right now, the citizens of the city are all discussing the Duanmu family and the Duanmu Feiyu. You've already fulfilled your promise, so it's not convenient for you to continue staying in Central Continent City. The Duanmu Feiyu will quickly find out that it was you who did it. When the time comes, they will definitely hunt you down and kill you. However, don't worry, I will think of a way to send you out of the city to a safe place. Su Er was also secretly thinking about how to quietly escape Central Continent City. When she heard Ji Tianqing say this, she hurriedly bowed and expressed her thanks. For Su Er to be able to receive young Master Ji's help, I am already endlessly grateful. Now that young Master Ji has helped Su Er like this, Su Er is truly grateful, but I am unable to repay you. Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that she didn't need to say any more. Then, he used a secret technique to change her facial features and appearance. After changing her appearance, Su Er changed into a cotton dress and hairpin. Her entire temperament completely changed. Even those who knew her wouldn't be able to recognize her that easily. After the preparations were complete, Ji Tianqing brought Su Er out of the old courtyard, hurrying towards Central Continent City's northern city gate. The North City Gate was the most deserted of the 4 city gates. There were fewer guards and their defensive power was slightly weaker. Ji Tianqing brought Su Er and successfully passed through the inspection of the city gate guards, leaving Central Continent City. The two of them stopped at the foot of a small mountain outside the city. There was no sign of human habitation within a radius of 10 miles. Under the night sky, the small mountain was silent. Ji Tianqing summoned Qian Yu and instructed, Qian Yu, escort Miss Su Er out of Central State City. You must escort her to a safe place. Qian Yu naturally nodded in agreement. Su Er bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing, then rode Qian Yu into the sky and left at lightning speed. Ji Tianqing turned around and returned to Central State City, hurrying towards the Cloud Mist Tavern. 2 hours later, he returned to his room on the 3rd floor of the inn. Yinyao had already been waiting in the room for a long time. When she saw him return, she hurriedly asked, Tianqing, what's the situation? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, don't worry, everything has been taken care of. I had Qian Yu send Miss Su Er away. Now, we just need to watch the situation develop. I want to see how the Duanmu family will deal with this matter. Yinyao frowned slightly and said with a bit of worry, Tianqing, will this really work? Although the common people in the city are discussing spiritedly and spreading many rumors, damaging the Duanmu family's reputation, the Duanmu family will definitely suppress the matter. But the Duanmu clan will definitely think of a way to suppress the storm. At most, Duanmu Feiyu will be punished, but he won't suffer too much loss. Ji Tianqing shook his head. He looked at her and said with a certain tone, Yao Yao, the Duanmu family will definitely suppress the rumors and won't let the common people stir up any trouble. However, this time, the Duanmu Feiyu will definitely not have it easy. He wantonly embezzled the Duanmu family's assets. Even if the Duanmu Huang turns a blind eye and doesn't punish him, what about Duanmu Yulong's mother? As the saying goes, a mother's status depends on her son. The first madam relied on her son, Duanmu Yulong, to sit firmly in the position of the Duanmu family's matriarch. Now that Duanmu Yulong is dead, Duanmu Feiyu is happy and wants to replace Duanmu Yulong's position. How can the first madam swallow this anger? Whether it's for her own position or to vent her anger, the first madam will not let the Duanmu Feiyu go. After listening to his analysis, Yunyao nodded in agreement. Yes, that's true. Actually, it's not just the Duanmu family. All the great families have this kind of problem. In order to fight for power and fame, brothers turn against each other and the madams of each branch scheme against each other. Even the maids and servants have to form cliques and suppress each other. Speaking of this, Yunyao's tone was a little emotional. It seemed like she was deeply touched. Ji Tianqing looked at her and asked with concern, "What's wrong? Could it be that you also have this kind of trouble in Cloud Soul Palace?" Yunyao nodded and said, "Cloud Soul Palace is not an immortal's cave abode. Of course, it's not an exception. However, I have always kept a respectful distance from scheming against each other. Those things are handled by my mother. Also, I rarely stay in Cloud Soul Palace. None of the children of the same generation have bad blood with me. At least, no one dares to scheme against me." Ji Tianqing smiled and said in a playful tone, "Don't worry. If anyone dares to scheme against you, I will settle the score with them one by one." Yunyao rolled her eyes at him. Don't bother with these trivial matters. You can't delay your cultivation. Right, what do you plan to do next?" Ji Tianqing stopped joking and said seriously, "I will continue to stay in the city and observe the situation. At the same time, I will also gather information. As for the next step, I will have to see how the Duanmu family reacts. However, Yao Yao, you have to return to the monarch residence. You can't move with me anymore. After all, you represent Cloud Soul Palace. If your identity is exposed, Cloud Soul Palace will be dragged in." Yunyao didn't want to leave. She only wanted to fight with him and work together to deal with the Duanmu family. However, what Ji Tianqing said was very reasonable, and it was a very important matter. She pondered silently for a while and could only nod in agreement. "All right, then I will return to the monarch residence tonight. However, you have to be careful. No matter what, you have to put your own safety first. If you need any help in gathering information, just tell the Hidden Cloud Pavilion to do it." The Yun family's Hidden Cloud Pavilion is spread throughout the cities of Central State. There are branches in every city. Yunyao warned Ji Tianqing before quietly leaving the Cloud Mist Inn. After she left, Ji Tianqing sat alone in the room and silently meditated to cultivate. A long night passed. At dawn the next day, Qian Yu finally rushed back to the Cloud Mist Inn and flew into the room. "Old Ji, I'm back. I've already followed your orders and sent Miss Su, heir, to a safe place." Hearing Qian Yu's voice, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. Very good." He nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "Go back to the 100 Treasures brocade pouch and rest. I want to gather information about the Duanmu family's movements before I decide what to do next." Chapter 634. In the depths of the mango forest. 100 miles to the north of Greenwood City, there was a towering mountain thousands of feet high. The Duanmu family's mansion was located at the peak of the mountain, hidden by the clouds and mist. There were more than a dozen ancient and majestic palaces and rows of exquisite and elegant buildings on the mountain peak. The Greenwood Palace facing the plaza at the peak of the mountain was the Duanmu family's main palace and meeting hall. Every time Duanmu Huang discussed important matters with the elders and attendants, they would hold a meeting in the main hall of the Greenwood Palace. It was early in the morning, and there were more than a dozen Duanmu family experts in the main hall. They were discussing an important matter. Sitting on the main throne in the main hall was a skinny middle-aged man with a goatee. He was the family head, Duanmu Huang. Duanmu Huang was silent, but his face was gloomy and there was a hint of anger between his brows. There were 12 experts standing on both sides of the main hall. They were the Duanmu family's elders and leaders. In addition, there was a handsome young man with red lips and white teeth. He was kneeling in the middle of the main hall. This young man was Duanmu Feiyu. The atmosphere in the main hall was a bit stifling, just like the hazy sky outside. The elders and leaders were silent on the surface, but they were secretly discussing something with their spiritual senses. At this time, Duanmu Huang picked up a notice with over 1,000 words on it from the table in front of him. He waved his hand and threw it at Duanmu Feiyu. Swoosh! The light yellow paper landed in front of Duanmu Feiyu and spread out on the ground. The scarlet words on the paper were clear. Duanmu Huang frowned and slammed the table with a face full of anger. He shouted in a deep voice, "You bastard, look at the stupid things you've done." In one night, tens of thousands of notices appeared out of thin air in Central State City, covering the streets and alleys. Now, all the people in the city are talking about you, and all the powers are rejoicing in your misfortune. Who knows how many people are laughing at our Duanmu family? You unfilial son. Do you want to anger me to death? Duanmu Feiyu was scolded harshly, but he was full of grievances and tried his best to defend himself. Father, how can you believe in this kind of baseless rumor and slander? Our Duanmu clan is a big tree that attracts the wind, attracting the covetous eyes of countless opponents and enemies. Who would have thought that the opponent this time would be so despicable, to actually use such a despicable method that only mortals would use? Before he could finish, Duanmu Huang shouted again, "Shut up! You bastard, don't you know what you've done wrong? Your elder brother was killed by Ji Tianqing, and his corpse hasn't even turned cold yet. You haven't even taken your revenge, yet you're indulging in debauchery outside. Where's your decency?" Duanmu Feiyu hurriedly explained, "Father, Big Brother was killed, and I hated that little bastard Ji Tianqing very much. I wished I could cut him into pieces. But didn't you hand this matter over to the elders to handle? I'm weak and can't help, so I can only focus on running the business. It's inevitable that I have to drink and discuss business with others." Duanmu Huang frowned and didn't want to delve into this matter. He asked again, "Then how do you explain the matter of you filling your own pockets and embezzling the clan's property?" Duanmu Feiyu of course refused to admit it and evaded all the blame. "Father, as the second young master of the Duanmu clan, how could I do something like embezzlement and embezzle the clan's property? These were all made up by those despicable people to deliberately slander me and tarnish the Duanmu clan's reputation. How can you believe?" Before Duanmu Feiyu could finish, a clear and dignified voice suddenly came from the entrance of the main hall. "Shut up!" Hearing this voice, Duanmu Huang and his son, as well as the elders and managers, all turned to look at the entrance of the main hall. Two graceful silhouettes stepped through the door and walked into the hall. The first to enter the main hall was a woman wearing a long brocade dress with a jade hairpin and a golden crown. She looked like she was in her 30s. She had a beautiful face and a graceful temperament. She had a dignified aura that came from someone who had been in a high position for a long time. She was Duanmu Yulong's birth mother, Duanmu Huang's first wife. Behind the first wife was a tall and beautiful woman in a green robe with a fierce aura. She had the strength of Sky Origin Stage and was the first wife's personal maid, her confidant. The first wife walked into the main hall with a graceful posture. Her exquisitely made-up face was filled with sorrow and pain. She walked to the middle of the main hall and bowed to Duanmu Huang. She said in a sorrowful voice, "Master, Feiyu has gone too far this time. It's too disappointing. Yulong's body is not cold yet, but instead of avenging his brother, he clapped his hands and cheered. He's even happier than our enemies. As a disciple of the Duanmu clan, he didn't serve the clan loyally and even embezzled the clan's property. This is simply lawless. In the past, you were merciful and forgiving to him, so be it. But this time, no matter what, you can't tolerate him anymore." The first wife's face was as cold as ice. Her voice was cold and dignified. She had the aura of a master's wife. The elders and the people in charge all had different thoughts. After hearing the first wife's words, Some people immediately nodded in agreement and asked Duanmu Huang to severely punish Duanmu Feiyu as a warning to others. Duanmu Huang suddenly had a headache. He frowned and said in a deep voice, "Madam, I am discussing this matter with the elders. It's not convenient for you to participate. Quickly leave." Duanmu Feiyu was also filled with anger. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. He wanted to strangle the first wife. However, in front of Duanmu Huang and the elders, he didn't dare to show any anger or hatred. He could only pray in his heart that his father would chase the first wife away so that she wouldn't stir up trouble here. However, how could the first wife be willing to leave? She looked at Duanmu Huang with disappointment and said in a sorrowful voice, "Master, are you really going to protect Duanmu Feiyu? It's just as the rumors say. After Yulong passed away, you will have to find another successor. I, as the master's wife, will become dispensable. Since that's the case, why don't you just give the order to demote me to a concubine and promote the second wife to the master's wife?" The first wife's tone was truly heartbroken and disappointed. She looked as if she had nothing left to live for. Duanmu Huang immediately frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "Nonsense. This matter hasn't been investigated yet. I am discussing it with the elders. Why are you interfering?" He looked at the first wife's servant and ordered, "Qing Zhu, immediately take the first wife back to her room to rest." However, Qing Zhu was unmoved. The first wife took out a stack of account books and files from her sleeves and said with a cold smile, "Master, I already guessed that you would be kept in the dark by Duanmu Feiyu and believe that he is innocent. Therefore, I have already sent people to investigate the evidence of Duanmu Feiyu embezzling the family's properties." There were 6 books of accounts and files. Every single property that Duanmu Feiyu had embezzled over the past few years was recorded clearly in the books. Chapter 635. When First Madam's voice fell, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone's expression changed as they looked at First Madam with complicated expressions. Duanmu Huang's brows were tightly knitted together as he stared at the account books and files on the table. He didn't reach out to take them. He understood First Madam's personality and methods very well. Since she had boldly barged into the hall and dared to take out the evidence in front of everyone, she must have absolute confidence. He didn't need to look at the account books and files to know that there must be irrefutable evidence. It was obvious that First Madam had seized this opportunity and wouldn't give Duanmu Feiyu a chance to turn the tables. The elders and leaders on both sides of the hall were exchanging glances and secretly communicating with each other through voice transmission. Some of them acted as if this matter didn't concern them and looked on coldly, while others rejoiced in Duanmu Feiyu's misfortune and waited for him to be punished. The leaders who supported Duanmu Feiyu had dark looks in their eyes and didn't dare to plead for leniency or dissuade First Madam. Duanmu Feiyu's face was deathly pale as he glared angrily at First Madam's back. His eyes were burning with rage. First Madam had criticized him in the past, but she had only reprimanded him verbally and hadn't really done anything to him. He had never imagined that First Madam would be serious this time and investigate his crimes so quickly. She wanted to kill him in one move. At this moment, Duanmu Feiyu finally realized what kind of scheming, power, and methods First Madam, as the matriarch of the clan. 10 breaths of time passed, but the hall was still silent. Duanmu Huang had no choice but to express his stance. He picked up the account books and files on the table and flipped through a few pages symbolically. The contents of the records were each more shocking than the last. His expression grew darker and darker until it was as cold as ice. Bang! Duanmu Huang slammed the account books and files on the table and looked angrily at Duanmu Feiyu. He cursed in a low voice, "You unfilial son. You're so disappointing." His heart was filled with rage, but more than that, he was exasperated at the fact that he had failed to live up to his expectations. He hated Duanmu Feiyu for being unambitious, greedy for pleasure, and committing crimes. Moreover, he was unbearably stupid, without scheming or shrewdness. He didn't even know that he had been schemed against. Duanmu Feiyu didn't dare to quibble anymore. He quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed, begging for mercy, "Father. I know I was wrong. When I was young and frivolous, I did indeed do many wrong things. However, please give me a chance to turn over a new leaf. I will definitely turn over a new leaf and turn over a new leaf." Before he could finish, Duanmu Huang interrupted him and ordered in a deep voice with an expressionless face, "Duanmu Feiyu, I can ignore all the crimes you commit outside, including murder and arson. But as my son, you've stuffed your own pockets and embezzled the family's assets and resources. This is an unforgivable crime. I will definitely not protect you. Today, I will punish you according to the family rules. From today onwards, I will take back all the power you have in your hands and remove you from your position. I punish you with 90 lashes and send you to the reflection cliff at the back of the mountain to reflect on your mistakes for a year. In addition, you are not allowed to interfere with the family's businesses for 5 years." After announcing the punishment, Duanmu Huang stared at Duanmu Feiyu and shouted with a dignified expression, "Later, you will go to the punishment hall to receive your punishment. If you dare to complain, the number of lashes will be doubled." Duanmu Huang's punishment for Duanmu Feiyu could not be considered heavy, but neither could it be considered light. 90 lashes, 1 year of reflection, 5 years of not being allowed to interfere with the family's businesses. These were all insignificant punishments. The real punishment that caused Duanmu Feiyu to fall from the clouds to the abyss and lose his power and status was the removal of his position and power. In the past, he was the second young master of the Duanmu family and controlled the businesses of more than 20 cities. He had great wealth and power in his hands and many powerful people under his command. But from today onwards, he could only be an idle young master and obediently stay at home to cultivate. He would never be able to stir up trouble again. After everyone heard Duanmu Huang's punishment, they all revealed complicated expressions. First Madam had achieved her goal, so of course she was satisfied. She bowed to Duanmu Huang and said, "Master is indeed fair and just. Such a decision is enough to convince everyone." After she finished speaking, she bowed to Duanmu Huang and left the main hall with Qing Zhu. Some of the elders and leaders rejoiced in Duanmu Feiyu's misfortune, while others secretly sighed. However, no one dared to oppose Duanmu Huang's decision, and no one pleaded for Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu knelt in the main hall with a pale face. His heart was filled with anger and despair, and his whole body trembled. But what was done could not be undone. He could only suppress his anger and silently stand up. He bowed to Duanmu Huang and left the main hall. 2 hours later, Duanmu Feiyu staggered out of the torture chamber. He was supported by 2 attendants and struggled to walk back to his residence. Just now, he had suffered 90 lashes in the torture chamber. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The torture chamber used the wind, fire and thunder whip, a heavenly origin level magic weapon. Every lash of the whip contained the violent and fierce power of wind and thunder. It was like the cutting of a sword, causing people to be in so much pain that they wished they were dead. Even though Duanmu Feiyu was at the heavenly origin level, after 90 lashes, his skin and flesh were lacerated and he was dripping with blood. The pain that seeped into his bone marrow still made him shudder when he thought about it. He limped along the bluestone path. His face was as white as paper and his mind was very weak. He looked very miserable. On the way back to his residence, he was cursing fiercely in his heart. "First Madam, that damn thing. She is too vicious. I didn't expect her to be so vicious. If she hadn't hit me while I was down, how could I have ended up like this? And that bastard who put up notices all over the city to secretly plot against me. Don't let me find out who you are. Otherwise, I will cut you into 8 pieces and burn your bones to ashes." Duanmu Feiyu did not blame Duanmu Huang for making such a decision. He knew that his father, Duanmu Huang, was already doing his best to protect him. This punishment was not excessive. He only hated First Madam for taking the opportunity to make things difficult for him. He hated the person who was plotting against him even more. After a while, Duanmu Feiyu returned to his residence. The maids had already spread out the brocade bedding on the bed and supported him to lie down on the bed to rest. His entire back was badly mutilated. For the next few days, he could only lie down on the bed to recuperate. A middle-aged pharmacist hurried over and hurriedly treated his wounds. He used all kinds of elixirs to help him treat his injuries. After the pharmacist treated his injuries, the pain from his back lessened by a lot. At this time, a tall and sturdy middle-aged man quickly walked into the room. He arrived in front of Duan Mufeiyu and cupped his hands to reporting to second young master, this subordinate has already found some clues. The person who secretly plotted against you and put up notices all over the city was most likely ordered by the young miss of the superior courtyard. Suddenly hearing this news, Duan Mufeiyu was stunned. Chapter 636. What? She was the one who did it? Duan Mufeiyu clearly didn't expect that the main culprit who caused him to be in such a state was actually Su. Although this news was rather shocking, he felt that it was inconceivable. However, the middle-aged man was his trusted aide named Nia Kuang. He definitely wouldn't lie about this. A moment later, Duan Mufeiyu came back to his senses. His brows knitted together as he asked with a gloomy expression, "That slut Su, was imprisoned in the Excellence Courtyard by me. How could she have ordered others to harm me?" Nia Kuang shook his head and said in a gloomy voice, "Second young master, the commander guarding the Excellence Courtyard just reported that young Miss Su, has already disappeared." "What did you say?" Duan Mufeiyu opened his eyes wide again and cursed angrily, "What are those good-for-nothings doing? How could they let Su, escape from the Excellence Courtyard? Since that slut Su, has already disappeared, why did they only report this now?" Nia Kuang lowered his head and said in a gloomy voice, "Second young master, they followed your orders and didn't dare to approach young Miss Su's loft without permission. Moreover, you went to the Excellence Courtyard the day before yesterday and didn't go there yesterday. The guards guarding the Excellence Courtyard only discovered young Miss Su's disappearance today." Duan Mufeiyu gnashed his teeth in anger. His eyes surged with a cold light as he shouted angrily, "This group of useless good-for-nothings, I will skin them alive. And that slut Su, if she really plotted against me, I will definitely make her wish she was dead. Let's go, follow me to the Excellence Courtyard." While cursing, Duan Mufeiyu got off the bed and walked out with a murderous aura. Filled with anger, he actually ignored the pain from his injuries and immediately rushed to the Excellence Courtyard. Nia Kuang hurriedly followed behind him and quickly walked out of the room. Not long after, the two of them left Cyanwood City on their flying spiritual birds. In the evening, Duan Mufeiyu and Nia Kuang arrived at Central Continent City and returned to the Excellence Courtyard. When Duan Mufeiyu crossed the gate and entered the courtyard, the guards and experts guarding the Excellence Courtyard all hurriedly came to greet him. Seeing those guards, he immediately became furious and cursed, "You bunch of idiots, get out of my way." The guards were so scared that they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Duan Mufeiyu ignored them for now and brought Nia Kuang to Su's loft. However, the loft was already empty. Duan Mufeiyu searched both upstairs and downstairs, but there was no sign of Su. Reality proved that Su had indeed escaped from the superior courtyard long ago. Unfortunately, the guards didn't notice any abnormalities, and the superior courtyard's defensive array was also intact. Duan Mufeiyu returned to the courtyard and looked at the guards with eyes as cold as ice, containing a biting cold murderous intent. "You pieces of trash, what's the point of this young master raising you? If it weren't for your stupidity, would I have been harmed like this?" Duan Mufeiyu cursed a few times with a venomous tone, then ordered Nia Kuang behind him, "This young master doesn't want to see these damned pieces of trash again. Kill them." Following his words, Nia Kuang's entire body burst forth with cold murderous intent, and he expressionlessly pounced on the guards. Those guards were immediately scared out of their wits. Some wept bitterly and begged for mercy, some fled in horror, and some resisted in despair. However, these guards were only at the origin core stage. How could they block Nia Kuang, who was at the 4th level of Sky Origin stage? Following a series of muffled bangs and screams, several corpses immediately appeared in the courtyard. Several pools of blood and severed limbs were scattered on the ground, and the air was filled with the thick stench of blood. The remaining guards who fled in panic didn't manage to escape from the superior courtyard. After all, the entire courtyard was enveloped by the Sky Origin Great Formation. They simply couldn't escape. The commotion and aftermath of the battle in the courtyard also wouldn't spread. Not long after, Nia Kuang killed all the guards and returned to Duanmu Feiyu's side, his body covered in blood. Second young master, everything has been taken care of. Nia Kuang cupped his hands in salute and reported in a low and cold voice. Duanmu Feiyu didn't pay attention to him. His eyes were gloomy as he looked outside the gate, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a cold smile. He muttered to himself, that bitch, so what if she escaped from the superior courtyard? Did she really think she could escape from this young master's palm? After he finished speaking, he waved his hands and used a secret technique to sense the aura and location of the Golden Moon magical bracelet. After about half an hour, Duanmu Feiyu found the result of his probing, and immediately revealed a trace of murderous intent. Humph. You actually escaped from Continent Center City? Since you've already chosen a place to bury your bones, this young master will send you to your death. After he finished speaking, Duanmu Feiyu left the superior courtyard with Nia Kuang, and rushed as fast as lightning to the southern city gate. After an hour, the two of them passed through the city gate and left Continent Center City, continuing to fly towards the mountain range in the south. Duanmu Feiyu had just discovered that the aura of the Golden Moon magical bracelet was in a mountain range in the southern suburbs of Continent Center City. The two of them flew for 50 li in the mountain range, and arrived at the peak of 1,000 zhang tall mountain. Duanmu Feiyu stood in the sky, looking down at the majestic mountain below, and coldly shouted, "It's here." He landed on the mountain peak with Nia Kuang, and once again used a secret technique to search for traces of the Golden Moon magical bracelet. After 100 breaths of time, Duanmu Feiyu sensed the exact location of the Golden Moon magical bracelet. It was about 2 li in front of him. He hurriedly rushed over with Nia Kuang. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them passed through the forest as fast as lightning, and after flying for 2 li, they arrived at the cliff of the mountain peak. As soon as Duanmu Feiyu flew out of the dense forest, he saw a wide grassland in front of him, and at the end of the grassland was a cliff. At the edge of the cliff, where clouds and mist rolled, stood a tall and straight young man, quietly gazing at the sea of clouds. Duanmu Feiyu was immediately stunned. He frowned as he looked at the back of the young man, and a look of astonishment appeared on his face. He clearly sensed that the aura of the Golden Moon magical bracelet was coming from that white-robed young man. However, he didn't recognize that white-robed young man, and he also didn't understand why the Golden Moon magical bracelet wasn't with Su. At this moment, the white-robed young man turned around, and a cold smile appeared on his handsome face. He said in a mocking tone, "Duanmu Feiyu, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Hearing this, Duanmu Feiyu's expression immediately changed, and his eyes flashed with intense vigilance and wariness. "Who are you? Why have you been waiting for this young master?" The cold smile on the white-robed young man's face became even more playful. A golden light flashed in his palm, and a dark golden bracelet appeared. It was none other than the Golden Moon magical bracelet. "Since you still can't guess who I am, then I'll tell you. I am Ji Tianqing." Duanmu Feiyu's expression changed again, and a thick murderous intent appeared in his eyes. "You're Ji Tianqing? The Golden Moon magical bracelet is actually in your hands. Was it you who saved that bitch Su? Chapter 637. Duanmu Feiyu wasn't an idiot. When he heard the words Ji Tianqing and saw the Golden Moon magical bracelet in Ji Tianqing's hand, he understood everything. Previously, he was still very doubtful. With Su's strength, it was impossible for her to escape from the superior courtyard. She also didn't have the guts to plot against him. Now, he finally understood that Ji Tianqing was the main culprit. Ji Tianqing admitted it very straightforwardly. He sneered and said, "Hee hee, looks like you're not too stupid." Duanmu Feiyu frowned as he looked at him. His eyes were cold and filled with dense killing intent. "Humph, you little bastard. You're really despicable and shameless. You actually used that slut Su-er to plot against me." Ji Tianqing didn't get angry at all. He said with a mocking sneer, "What's a little trick to deal with a bastard like you who doesn't shrink from any crime? Moreover, killing a bastard like you is also helping the people and helping Tianqing get rid of a scourge." Duanmu Feiyu immediately grinned and sneered with disdain. "Hee hee hee. Ji Tianqing, you want to kill me? You're really a toad yawning. What big words. I was just about to send people to deal with you and avenge my big brother. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. You don't know the difference between life and death. If I don't tear you to shreds today, how can I live up to your arrogance?" Hearing Duanmu Feiyu's words, Ji Tianqing didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and said with disdain, "Duanmu Feiyu, the arrogant and ignorant one is you. Even your big brother Duanmu Yulong died under my sword. With your strength, you dare to say that you want to take my life? Are you worthy?" As he spoke, Ji Tianqing's body emitted a strong self-confidence and domineering aura. Duanmu Feiyu's face immediately stiffened and his heart thumped. If he was in the Duanmu clan or in the central continent city, he could mobilize dozens of Sky Origin stage cultivators with a single word and easily kill Ji Tianqing. However, he wasn't in the central continent city right now. There was only Sky Origin stage 4th layer Nya Kuang by his side. If they really fought, the situation wouldn't be good. Thinking about this, Duanmu Feiyu's expression became serious and a trace of regret appeared in his heart. "Damn it. I was so angered by that slut Su-er that I lost my head and actually came out of the city so recklessly. Ji Tianqing, that little bastard, not only did he not hide after killing my big brother, he even dared to take the initiative to plot against me. He wants to kill me, what should I do?" Duanmu Feiyu was thinking about how to escape, but he didn't look scared. He shouted with a murderous look, "Ji Tianqing, no matter how powerful you are only at the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage. Do you think you can defeat the two of us? Stop dreaming. Prepare to die." While shouting angrily, Duanmu Feiyu took out a dark cyan treasured saber. He unleashed all of his power and slashed at Ji Tianqing. Sky-sweeping waves. The Sky Origin stage dark green treasured saber emitted a dazzling blue light. It condensed into 4 huge saber lights that were 30 meters long and slashed at Ji Tianqing's head. In an instant, the grass within 100 meters was covered by the blue light. The air was filled with bone-chilling coldness. While Duanmu Feiyu was attacking, Nya Kuang had already held his 2 mountain-splitting axes. He roared with a murderous aura and used his ultimate killing move. He used all his strength. His body expanded to twice its original size. His whole body was emitting a violent murderous aura. Moon-shattering slash. Nya Kuang waved his black mountain-splitting axes and fiercely slashed out 6 fierce golden axe shadows. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing's figure was covered by the saber lights and axe shadows. He was like a small boat in a huge wave that could capsize at any time. Although Nya Kuang and Duanmu Feiyu were not as strong as the princes of the imperial residence, they still had the power to split mountains and rivers. They could not be underestimated. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing was shrouded by the saber lights and axe shadows. But he did not panic. He condensed a shield of true ether to protect himself. Then, he used his ultimate skill. Golden Slash. A huge golden sword light that was 80 meters long appeared. It carried a terrifying power that could split heaven and earth. It slashed at the saber lights and axe shadows in the sky. Bang! 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 The sword light and the axe shadows collided. There was a deafening sound that resounded in the sky and spread for dozens of miles. Suddenly, the saber lights and axe shadows exploded and turned into thousands of pieces that scattered in all directions. A golden and blue shockwave rippled outwards, engulfing the entire mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, the dense forest on the mountain peak was crushed into powder by the shock waves. A huge crater with a radius of 100 meters appeared on the ground. The huge golden sword light was still intact. It carried an incomparably violent power and slashed at Nyakwang. Bang! Nyakwang was sent flying by the sword light. The mountain-splitting axes in his hands also flew out. He was still tumbling in the air when he opened his mouth and spat out blood and screamed in pain. His true ether shield was shattered by the sword light. A huge long and narrow wound appeared on his chest, revealing the white bones inside. Dark red blood gushed out like a tide and sprinkled down from the sky. Duanmu Feiyu had long expected that he and Nyakwang were no match for Ji Tianqing. They were bound to lose this battle. Therefore, when he was sent flying and saw Nyakwang heavily injured, he turned and ran without hesitation. Ji Tianqing, you bastard, just you wait. As long as I escape back to Central State City, I will mobilize all the Heaven Origin stage experts to kill you. I will skin you alive and tear out your tendons. Duanmu Feiyu cursed bitterly. He flapped his true ether wings with all his might and flew across the sky like a stream of light, escaping towards Central State City. On the devastated mountain peak, Ji Tianqing was still fighting with Nyakwang. After Nyakwang fell to the ground with heavy injuries, he had just climbed up from the ruins when he saw Ji Tianqing use another ultimate skill, releasing flames that covered the sky and earth. Scorching sun fire. Following Ji Tianqing's angry roar, the scarlet flames that covered the sky suddenly condensed into a fireball the size of a palace. The fireball was condensed and floated high in the sky, emitting an incomparably terrifying heat. It was really like a scorching sun. Swoosh! The giant fireball fell from the sky, carrying with it a world-destroying might as it smashed towards Nyakwang. In that instant, Nyakwang's eyes widened in shock and fear, his heart filled with despair. The giant fireball had locked onto his aura. No matter where he ran, it would definitely catch up to him. Moreover, he had no chance to escape or dodge. In this moment of life and death, Nyakwang erupted with a strong will to live and desperately urged his true ether to form a shield. Bang! In the next moment, a huge fireball that was as hot as the sun came crashing down and smashed into him, smashing him into the ruins. An earth-shaking explosion spread out for dozens of miles, fiercely reverberating through the mountains. The entire 10,000-foot-tall mountain peak was blasted apart, collapsing with a loud bang and sending dust into the air. Chapter 638. Nyakwang was only Duanmu Feiyu's trusted guard, an ordinary cultivator of the 4th level of Sky Origin stage. Even Duanmu Yulong couldn't block Ji Tianqing's attack. How could he survive? When the blazing sun flame shattered the entire mountain, Nyakwang was also blasted into pieces and burned to ashes. He only managed to withstand 2 moves from Ji Tianqing before he was completely killed. The loud explosion was still echoing. Dust was still flying in the air. The raging fire covered an area of 10 miles and dyed half of the sky red. By this time, Ji Tianqing had left the fire and the ruins. He flapped his golden wings and flew across the sky like a shooting star, chasing after Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu had just flown 10 miles away and was feeling lucky. Luckily, I was prepared. I retreated in time. Otherwise, I would have been killed by Ji Tianqing. Nyakwang being killed is nothing. I just hope he can stall Ji Tianqing for a while and buy some time for me. As this thought flashed through his mind, a dazzling golden light suddenly flew over his head. Swoosh! That golden light was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was more than 1,000 meters away from him and stopped in the sky. A tall and straight figure in a white robe appeared. Duanmu Feiyu's face froze and his heart sank to the bottom. Ji Tianqing, that little bastard. How can he be so fast? Where is that trash Nyakwang? Was he killed by Ji Tianqing? Duanmu Feiyu was terrified. He had no choice but to stop and stare at Ji Tianqing with an ugly face. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky 200 meters away from him. He sneered and said, "Duanmu Feiyu, since I have lured you out, I will not let you go back. Don't dream of going back to the city to get reinforcements. Just accept your death obediently." Duanmu Feiyu's brows were tightly knitted. There was some fear in his heart as he shouted, "Ji Tianqing. Although you killed my big brother, I have no enmity with you. Why do you want to kill me?" Ji Tianqing curled his lips and said with a cold smile, "No enmity between us? I already have a blood feud with your Duanmu clan, so it's impossible for your Duanmu clan to let me off no matter what. Do you dare to deny that your father did not plan to assassinate me? Moreover, even if there is no enmity between us, I will still kill you. Just treat it as a punishment for evil, and on behalf of Tianqing." Duanmu Feiyu was immediately filled with grief and indignation. She was so angry she almost spat out blood. "Ji Tianqing, this place is only 30-something li away from Central State City. If you dare kill me, you will definitely alarm countless experts in the city. By then, when the experts of my Duanmu clan arrive, you will be dead for sure." Ji Tianqing sneered coldly, "Heh, heh, since you still want to be lucky and wait for the experts of your Duanmu clan to come and save you, why don't we give it a try? I will let you know that even if the experts of your Duanmu clan come to save you, it will be useless. Nobody will be able to save you." As he spoke, his body was glowing with golden light. Sword intent shot up to the sky as he was about to launch an attack. Duanmu Feiyu was completely helpless. Her heart was filled with despair. He knew clearly that even if the Sky Origin stage cultivators of Central State City were alerted and came to his rescue, it would still take some time. Whether he could survive until the experts of the Duanmu clan came to his rescue was the key to his survival. However, the answer was obvious. Even Nie Kuang, who was at the 4th level of Sky Origin stage, was killed in 2 moves. How could he survive for long? Thinking of this, Duanmu Feiyu was filled with anxiety and grief. She could only try her best to stall for time and find a way to survive. "Ji Tianqing. Don't kill me. Stop it." He hurriedly waved his hand and shouted for Ji Tianqing to stop. Enduring the humiliation, he surrendered to Ji Tianqing. "Ji Tianqing, I know that the reason why you are doing this is because you want to deal with the Duanmu clan. I have no enmity with you. Even if you kill me, you won't gain anything. As long as you are willing to let me live, I will follow your orders and do as you say." When Ji Tianqing heard Duanmu Feiyu's words, he immediately revealed a cold and disdainful smile. "Duanmu Feiyu, don't say such nonsense that is used to coax a 3-year-old child. What a disgrace. If I spare your life, you will immediately gather a large number of experts to deal with me when you return to Central State City. How would you listen to my orders?" Duanmu Feiyu's expression changed. He swallowed the second half of his sentence. Ji Tianqing was right. That was exactly what he planned to do. Begging for mercy was only a temporary measure. As long as he returned to Central State City, he would definitely crazily retaliate against Ji Tianqing. Duanmu Feiyu's lie was instantly seen through by Ji Tianqing. He hurriedly explained, "Ji Tianqing, I can tell you a secret of the Duanmu clan to show my sincerity in begging for mercy. This information is a core secret of our Duanmu clan. Only a few people know about it." Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing lowered his hands as expected. His eyes indifferently looked at him. Duanmu Feiyu saw that there was hope. Ji Tianqing was indeed interested in this matter, so he thought that there was still room for negotiation. Thus, he said in a low and solemn voice, "Ji Tianqing, although I don't know which power is backing you, I can tell you this clearly. However, I can clearly tell you that the strength of our Duanmu clan is far beyond your imagination. Our Duanmu clan's strongest expert is not my father, Duanmu Huang. That expert's strength is enough to look down on the profound sky continent. You and your backing definitely cannot afford to offend him. If you know what's good for you, let me go. I can treat it as if nothing happened." Duanmu Feiyu originally thought that Ji Tianqing would seriously consider his words after hearing this. However, he never expected that Ji Tianqing would immediately say with a cold smile, "Duanmu Feiyu, since things have reached this point, do you still think that bluffing is of any use? I really overestimated you. Compared to your big brother, Duanmu Yulong, you are simply too lacking." After saying this, Ji Tianqing no longer hesitated. His entire body lit up with a dazzling golden light, bursting with killing intent that soared to the heavens. Metal Emperor Slash. Golden light surged out of his palms. It gathered the metal energy within a radius of 10 miles, forming a giant golden sword that was over 100 meters long. That incomparably huge sword radiance flickered with a dazzling golden light, illuminating the dark sky. It emitted a sharp aura that could tear apart heaven and earth. Die! Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice. He controlled the giant golden sword that could split heaven and earth and slashed towards Duanmu Feiyu. Duanmu Feiyu was already scared out of his wits. His eyes were wide open, revealing a deep sense of fear. He turned around and ran for his life. However, even if he exploded with his fastest speed, it was impossible for him to escape the slash of the sword radiance. Bang! In the deafening sound, the giant sword that could split heaven and earth slashed him, shattering his vital core shield and soft armor into pieces. Duanmu Feiyu was killed on the spot. A huge wound split open on his chest, and dark red blood gushed out. His corpse fell from the sky and was about to hit the ground below. However, Ji Tianqing had already shot out a giant golden hand and caught his corpse. Chapter 639. Ji Tianqing carried Duanmu Feiyu's corpse and flew across the dark sky as fast as lightning, leaving the southern outskirts mountain range. He did not return to Central State City. Instead, he rode Xianyu and flew southeast as fast as a ray of light. At this time, some Sky Origin stage experts in Central State City noticed the commotion in the southern outskirts mountain range and hurried over. However, when they entered the southern outskirts mountain range, they could only see collapsed mountains and ruins covered in cracks. They did not know who had fought here. The night passed quickly. At dawn the next day, Ji Tianqing passed through the famous Mangu forest and entered Greenwood City. At this time, the sky was still dark. The entire Greenwood City was still in a deep sleep and was very quiet. Ji Tianqing crossed Greenwood City and arrived at a mountain peak 100 miles north of the city. He quietly arrived at the peak of the mountain. The Duanmu mansion at the peak of the mountain was shrouded in a thick morning fog, faintly discernible. He did not enter the Duanmu mansion's palace. He hid in the dark and observed for a while. Then, he threw Duanmu Feiyu's corpse on the square in front of the main hall and quietly left. His movements were very fast and stealthy. He avoided several patrolling guards. No one knew what he was doing. Not long after he left, a group of patrolling guards passed by the square and found the corpse. 9 guards in green armor immediately surrounded the blood-soaked corpse when they saw it. When they recognized the corpse as Duanmu Feiyu, they were stunned on the spot. Their faces were full of shock. They did not dare to believe that the noble second young master, who was in high spirits 2 days ago, had turned into a cold corpse today. After the guard captain came back to his senses, he told the guards to look after the corpse and not to touch it. He hurriedly ran into the main hall to report the news. Not long after, the guard captain guarding the Greenwood main hall was alarmed. He hurriedly led a group of guards to the square. Then, the news spread through the Duanmu mansion, waking up countless people. Cries of surprise sounded in the various palaces, breaking the silence of the morning. Half a quarter of an hour later, the guard commander sent people to carry Duanmu Feiyu's body into the main hall. Hundreds of people had already gathered in the square. They were craning their necks to look into the hall, whispering and discussing. Inside the main hall, the Duanmu family's leaders and elders had also arrived. When they saw Duanmu Feiyu's corpse, their faces became as gloomy as ice. Finally, the head of the family, Duanmu Huang, heard the news and rushed to the main hall. Hearing the bad news early in the morning, his mood was naturally irritable. His eyebrows were filled with anger and killing intent. When he saw Duanmu Feiyu's body with his own eyes, his face immediately darkened, and his whole body emitted a terrifying chill and murderous intent. Who can tell me what's going on? Wasn't Feiyu reflecting on his mistakes in the back mountains? Why was he murdered? Where was his body found? Duanmu Huang's voice was filled with murderous intent as he roared in anger. If one looked closely, one could see the murderous intent in his eyes. The guard commander hurriedly took 2 steps forward, clasped his hands and reported, "Master, 15 minutes ago, a group of guards was patrolling the square. They found second young master." After he finished, Duanmu Huang's face turned even darker. The coldness from his whole body became even more intense. Several elders and leaders also began to whisper to each other as they discussed. Second young master was still in the house yesterday morning. How could he be killed today? Second young master was protected by Nie Kuang. He was at the second level of Sky Origin stage. How could he be killed so easily? I wonder where Feiyu was killed. Was it in the house? Greenwood City? Or somewhere else? Who was the one who did this? How could they kill Feiyu at this critical moment? I'm afraid second madam is going to make a scene. Duanmu Huang thought for a while with a gloomy face. Then he ordered in a deep voice, "Men, go to second young master's house. Find out if second young master was in the house last night. Where did he go? Send men to find Nie Kuang. I want to see him if he's alive. I want to see his body if he's dead. Also, keep this secret for now. Don't let it spread out. We can't let second madam know." Even though his son was killed, Duanmu Huang was so angry that he almost broke his teeth. However, he was still able to keep calm. Soon, he figured out the key to this matter. He arranged his men methodically and sent them to investigate. Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a figure barged into the hall. It was a woman in a long silk dress. She looked elegant and beautiful. She was even younger and prettier than the first madam. She was Duanmu Feiyu's mother, the second madam of Duanmu Huang's family. At this moment, the second madam had just heard the bad news of Duanmu Feiyu's death. Her face was as white as paper, and she looked as if she had lost her soul. She stumbled into the hall, ignoring the presence of Duanmu Huang and the other elders. She threw herself onto Duanmu Feiyu's body and started bawling. "Feiyu. My son, you died so miserably. Which damned bastard actually killed you? Feiyu. Wake up and take a look at your mother." The atmosphere in the hall was already cold and stifling. When the second madam's heart-wrenching cries rang out, everyone's hearts tightened and their bodies turned cold. Duanmu Huang looked at the second madam's heartbroken appearance. He wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know what to say. After a moment of silence, he could only say, "Men, bring second madam back to her room to rest." 2 maids immediately entered the hall and supported the second madam by her arms. They were about to bring her out of the hall. The second madam cried with tears and snot flowing down her face. She tried her best to shake off the 2 maids. Her eyes were red as she looked at Duanmu Huang. Her voice was hoarse as she cried, "Master, our son was killed. How can I still rest? Feiyu was my life. Now that he's dead, I don't want to live anymore." Duanmu Huang quickly comforted her, "Madam, calm down. I'm sending people to investigate. I'll definitely get to the bottom of this. No matter who did it, if they dared to kill my son, Duanmu Huang, I'll make sure they die without a burial ground. Madam, don't be too sad. Go back and rest. I'll handle this matter." However, the second madam didn't listen to his comforting words. She sneered as if she had gone crazy. "Get to the bottom of this? What's there to investigate? Who wanted to kill Feiyu? Don't tell me everyone doesn't know. Her son was killed, so she couldn't bear to see me living well. She thought of ways to deal with Feiyu and caused my son's death as well. The first madam's heart is so vicious. She's simply inhumane. As soon as she said that, the entire hall was shocked. Everyone's expression changed. Duanmu Huang's pupils contracted. He quickly shouted, "Shut up. Don't talk nonsense here." The second madam only had one son, Duanmu Feiyu. Now that Duanmu Feiyu was dead, she was already disheartened. She no longer had any scruples. She screamed hysterically, "What? Did I say something wrong?" Ever since Duanmu Yulong died, the first madam has been targeting Feiyu. The day before yesterday, she even took out the evidence of Feiyu's crime and wanted to kill him. This morning, my son Feiyu died. How can there be such a coincidence in this world? If it wasn't her, who else could it be? Chapter 640. The heartbroken second madam was crying and making a fuss in the Greenwood main hall. The pain of losing her son had caused her to lose her rationality and become unreasonable and crazy. Originally, she had been riding on the crest of success during this period of time. She had been favored because of the Duanmu Feiyu's status. Not long after, she would gradually replace the first madam and become the Duanmu family's mistress. However, before she could be happy for a few days, the Duanmu Feiyu had been killed. Although she did not know who the murderer was, she was certain that it was the first madam who did it. After all, the first madam was the most suspicious and had the most reason to kill the Duanmu Feiyu. The second madam was not the only one who thought this. The other elders and leaders also had the same thought. It was just that everyone was muttering and doubting in their hearts, and they didn't dare to say it out loud like second madam. The Duanmu Huang had a headache, but he could not punish the second madam. He could only patiently console her. As the head of the family, he had to deal with things fairly. He could not favor one over the other. However, the second madam was truly turning the world upside down. The Duanmu Huang could only use some methods and use the power of his divine sense to temporarily put her to sleep. The Duanmu Huang had two maids take the second madam away to rest. Only then did the main hall quiet down. Of course, everyone knew that this was only a temporary measure. Since the second madam had caused such a ruckus, she definitely would not let it go. She would definitely fight to the death with the first madam. Not long after, the guard commander quickly returned to the main hall and respectfully reporting to family head, "This subordinate has already gone to the second young master's residence and interrogated the guards and servants. Yesterday, the second young master was not in the residence. He took Nia Kuang out to handle some matters. It seems that he went to Central State City." The Duanmu Huang frowned and said in a low voice, "This unfilial son. This lord had him go to the reflection cliff and reflect on his mistakes. He actually dared to go to Central State City. Could it be that Fei Yu was killed in Central State City? Why would his corpse appear in the plaza?" Even with the Duanmu Huang's wisdom, he could not understand what was going on. After pondering for a moment, Duanmu Huang ordered in a deep voice, "Send an order to Central Continent City. Have the soul-hurting hall investigate immediately. We must find Nia Kuang." The guard commander cupped his hands and bowed. He turned around and left the hall to carry out his orders. Duanmu Huang continued to give orders, "Second elder, third elder, carry out your plan as soon as possible. You must kill that bastard Ji Tianqing as soon as possible and avenge Yulong. In a short span of 3 months, 2 of my sons were killed. This is a great humiliation to our Duanmu clan. If we don't get rid of our enemies as soon as possible, the other aristocratic families will definitely rejoice in our misfortune." The second elder and the third elder's faces were also filled with indignation. They hurriedly cupped their hands and saluted, indicating that they would definitely complete the task. After Ji Tianqing left Greenwood City, he flew across the sky at lightning speed and crossed the mango forest. Along the way, he looked down at the vast forest from high up in the sky. He saw many dangerous mountains and winding rivers. The forest that was shrouded in clouds and mist was filled with all kinds of strange flowers and fruits, as well as endless amounts of medicinal herbs. This natural herb garden with a radius of 100,000 miles was the biggest reason why the Duanmu clan had prospered for thousands of years. He could not help but think to himself, if there is some way to destroy this mango forest and cut off the Duanmu clan's source of medicinal herbs, it will definitely be a heavy blow to the Duanmu clan. Recently, he had been focusing on dealing with the Duanmu clan. His mind was constantly thinking about how to weaken the Duanmu clan's power. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed and it was noon. Ji Tianqing was flying above the vast sea of clouds, crossing over a stretch of majestic mountain range. Originally, the sun was shining brightly in the sky, dyeing the white sea of clouds with a layer of golden light. However, at this moment, he realized that there was a huge black cloud high up in the sky, blocking the sunlight. The area within a radius of dozens of miles became dark. Strong winds blew in the sky, blowing the vast sea of clouds and causing them to churn violently. Ji Tianqing could vaguely sense that the air seemed to contain a trace of cold and bloody murderous aura. He immediately frowned and a look of suspicion and wariness flashed across his eyes. Ever since he came to the Central State, he had not interacted with anyone from the Demon Clan. However, based on the experience he had accumulated in the Tianshan region, he could acutely sense that there were Demon Clan powerhouses around him. Even the huge black cloud in the sky was definitely not formed naturally. There was definitely something strange about it. As expected, just as he slowed down his flying speed and looked around, the black cloud in the sky suddenly surged. In the blink of an eye, the surging demon fog condensed into a huge demon face. The demon face had a pair of huge scarlet eyes. It stared down at Ji Tianqing from above, revealing a ferocious and bloodthirsty cold smile. Keek keek. Ji Tianqing, I have finally found you. The demon face's huge mouth opened and closed, letting out a deep voice that reverberated in the sky like rolling thunder. Ji Tianqing immediately stopped flying. He stood in the sky and looked up at the demon face. A cold light flashed across his eyes. There is indeed a demon clan powerhouse attacking. When he suddenly saw the demon face in the sky, he instinctively thought that it was the demon emperor. However, after sensing it carefully, he realized that the aura of the huge demon face was not as unfathomable as that of the ancient demon emperor. When he heard what the demon face said, he was sure that it was not the demon emperor but a demon king powerhouse. Ji Tianqing looked at the demon face in the sky calmly without any worry or fear. He said in a low and cold voice, "The remnants of the demon clan are so savage that you dare to come to the Central State?" The demon face opened its huge mouth and sneered in a deep voice, "Humph. In the ancient times, my clan was the ruler of the Tianxian continent. We ruled the world and ruled over hundreds of races. The Central State was originally my clan's territory. It was just that it was invaded by you humans. Why would I dare to come to the Central State? I will kill a lowly worm like you today." Ji Tianqing had heard of some legends from the ancient times and knew that the demon face was telling the truth. However, he was not interested in this question. He sneered with a cold expression, "Cut the crap. Are you avenging the Blood Demon King or working for the ancient demon emperor? Tell me your name. My sword does not kill nameless rats." The demon face opened its mouth and sneered. "Ha ha ha. Who does the Blood Demon King think he is? I am the king of the fierce Wind tribe. I only follow the orders of His Majesty the Demon Emperor. Ji Tianqing, if you know what's good for you, surrender immediately. Don't wait for me to attack. Otherwise, you will suffer." The Demon King of Fierce Wind's tone was full of confidence and arrogance. It was as if victory was in his hands and he already had Ji Tianqing's life in his hands. As his voice fell, the demon cloud that covered the sky spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it covered a radius of 10 miles. The demon cloud condensed into a thick black wall of light, forming a huge black ball of light that sealed off the sky within a radius of 10 miles. Chapter 641. The black light barrier was like a huge cage, trapping Ji Tianqing within. Endless demonic aura poured down, filling the entire black light sphere and drowning Ji Tianqing's figure. The demonic aura contained a bone-chilling coldness and a powerful corrosive force. Even though Ji Tianqing's body had been tempered thousands of times, his physical strength and defense were far superior to divine prime experts of the same level. However, after being infected by the demonic aura, he still felt a stabbing pain all over his body, and his skin was corroded black. He quickly channeled his power and condensed a shield with his majestic vital essence to protect his body. However, the vital essence shield could not resist the corrosion of the demonic aura. It was quietly thinning, and its power was rapidly weakening. Ji Tianqing had to constantly consume power to maintain the vital essence shield. Even if the Demon King of Lifeng did not attack, his vital essence would be exhausted after staying in the demonic aura for 2 hours at most. What secret technique is this? How can it be so powerful? He was a little surprised and muttered to himself. At the same time, the Demon King of Liefeng's mocking laughter came from the dark demonic aura behind him. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing, I've been watching you for a long time, and I've made ample preparations before attacking. I've carefully prepared the dark cage for you. As long as you're trapped in it, there's no way you can escape. Are you panicking? Are you afraid? Don't worry, I'll let you slowly taste the pain and despair. Obviously, this dark area with a radius of 10 miles was the dark cage that the Demon King of Lifeng had mentioned. This was a divine prime secret technique of the demons. It was extremely troublesome to perform, and it required the blood essence of hundreds of sacrifices, as well as a lot of resources. However, once the dark cage was successfully performed, its power was extremely terrifying. Ji Tianqing suddenly heard the Demon King of Liefeng's voice. He subconsciously turned his head and looked behind him, his eyes sharp as he searched around. However, there was only endless darkness behind him. There was no one at all. Even if he used his spiritual sense to investigate, he could not find the Demon King of Liefeng's body. As such, even if he wanted to resist, there was no way he could do it. Dark cage? I'd like to see how long your meticulously prepared secret technique can trap me. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, his eyes revealing an unyielding fighting spirit. A cold light flashed in his palm, and a dark sword appeared out of thin air. It was the Black Dragon Sword. 9 Heavens Dragon Soars. Ji Tianqing abruptly unsheathed his sword and slashed out a 40-meter-long cold sword aura, fiercely hacking at the darkness ahead. The giant ice sword lit up with a dazzling sword light, bursting forth with an invincible and terrifying power. It cut through the shroud of the pitch-black demonic fog and slashed into the depths of the darkness. However, this sword slashed through the air and did not cut anything at all. In the blink of an eye, the cold and dazzling sword light was swallowed up by the darkness and disappeared. The dark prison was still intact, and there was no reaction at all. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. How could this be? I slashed down with my sword, but there was no reaction at all. Could this dark prison be a large array? Ji Tianqing vaguely felt that it was impossible to break the dark prison with a powerful sword technique. He quickly released his spiritual sense and carefully probed the surrounding situation, trying to find clues about the dark prison and find clues to crack the array. Unfortunately, he could not find any clues after observing for a while with his spiritual sense, nor could he see how the array was constructed. This result made him even more puzzled, and he thought to himself, no. With my attainments in array Dao, even if I can't crack all of the Tianyuan arrays, I should be able to find clues. At least I can detect the existence of the array and sense the power of the array. The Demon King of Lifeng is also at the Tianyuan stage, and it's impossible for him to set up a soul-level array. If this dark prison is a Tianyuan array, I should be able to find clues. Could it be that this is not a large array? Just as Ji Tianqing was calmly analyzing, the Demon King of Liefeng's sneer came from the darkness behind him. Ha, Ji Tianqing, I know you're good at array Dao and good at cracking large arrays. But you'll never be able to crack my dark prison. How could a despicable human worm like you understand the wonders of my race's secret technique? Hearing the demon king of Liefeng's confident and proud words, Ji Tianqing was immediately sure that the dark prison was not a large array, but a secret technique of the demon race. Moreover, he had been waiting for the demon king of Liefeng to speak again. When the demon king of Liefeng's voice sounded, he had already swung the black dragon sword at lightning speed and slashed at the darkness behind him. Swoosh! A giant golden sword appeared out of thin air, bursting with a power that could destroy everything, and slashed at the darkness 100 meters behind him. However, the darkness was empty, and there was only a large mass of dark demonic fog. The giant golden sword slashed at the mass of dark demonic fog with a muffled bang, and was soon swallowed by the boundless darkness without causing any reaction. No matter how powerful Ji Tianqing's sword technique was, it could not threaten the demon king of Liefeng. It felt like he had punched cotton with all his strength. The demon king of Liefeng laughed and said in a mocking and pitying tone, "Ha ha ha. You stupid worm, you actually want to take the opportunity to sneak attack me? I've already turned into infinite demonic energy and merged with the dark prison. In this dark prison, I'm the invincible ruler. Your life and death are in my hands." Ji Tianqing's face became gloomier, and the murderous aura in his eyes became more intense. He silently put away the black dragon sword and asked in a low voice, "Demon king of Liefeng, do you dare to fight me fair and square, you coward?" The demon king of Liefeng's voice sounded in the darkness above his head. "Ji Tianqing, don't try to goad me. It's ridiculous. I don't need to show myself, nor do I need to fight you. I just need to trap you in the prison for 2 hours. After 2 hours, your true yuan will be exhausted, and you will no longer have the power to resist. At that time, you will be at my mercy." Ji Tianqing silently listened to the demon king of Liefeng's words, but he was not angry and could still remain calm. He analyzed an important piece of information from the demon king of Liefeng's words. Given the cruel and bloodthirsty nature of the demon race, if the demon king of Liefeng wanted to kill me, he would not have said so much nonsense to me. It seems that his goal is not to kill me, but to capture me. Ji Tianqing recalled something. Back in the Sky Pillar sect, when the ancient demon emperor had just broken through the seal, he had said something. The ancient demon emperor had said that the sword god's bloodline in his body was the best sacrifice that could help it quickly recover its vitality. Thinking of this, he could roughly guess the demon king of Liefeng's goal. Chapter 642. Ji Tianqing had already guessed the demon king Liefeng's intention. However, he could neither escape from the dark cage nor fight the demon king Liefeng head-on. Helplessly, he could only fly forward with all his might. He wanted to rush to the edge of the dark cage and find a way to break the barrier. However, after flying for more than 10 miles in the darkness, he still could not reach the edge of the dark cage and return to his original spot. This time, Ji Tianqing was really at his wit's end. He could only circulate his energy to resist the erosion of the demonic qi and try his best to think of a way to escape. The dark cage has a radius of 10 miles. No matter what sword technique I use, I can't break the cage. Since the sword technique is useless, I can only try that magic treasure. Ji Tianqing murmured to himself and immediately took out a square golden seal from his interspatial ring. This was the Domain Lord's golden seal of the Tianqian Domain Lord and a soul-level magic treasure refined by the Emperor himself, the seal of mountains and rivers. Ji Tianqing had never used the seal of mountains and rivers since he obtained it. This time, he wanted to test the power of the seal of mountains and rivers and see if it could help him escape from the demon king Liefeng's dark cage. Holding the seal of mountains and rivers in his left hand, he waved his right hand with a solemn expression and used a secret technique to control the power of the seal of mountains and rivers. When his right hand shot out beams of true essence into the seal of mountains and rivers, the entire golden seal immediately burst out with a dazzling golden light. Swoosh! The dazzling golden light spread out and formed a 5-meter golden light shield that enveloped Ji Tianqing and protected him. The golden light contained a sacred and powerful power that immediately dispelled the darkness and blocked the erosion of the demonic qi. Ji Tianqing only felt the pressure suddenly reduced and the endless demonic qi in the cage could no longer touch him. At this time, the demon king Liefeng's voice came from a cloud of demonic qi 100 meters behind him. What kind of treasure is this? The demon king Liefeng's tone was full of surprise and a trace of fear. Ji Tianqing sneered and shouted in a cold tone, "Of course it's a treasure that will take your life." As his voice fell, his right hand formed a mysterious seal and injected a vast amount of true essence into the seal of mountains and rivers. Open! Ji Tianqing suddenly shouted coldly, activating the seal of mountains and rivers to release a dazzling golden light that covered the sky. The dazzling golden light condensed into a huge pillar of light, which blasted fiercely into the darkness behind him. Boom! The 100-meter-long golden pillar of light carried a destructive power as it pierced through the layers of demonic mist and struck the black light barrier at the edge of the cage. An earth-shattering explosion was heard, and it reverberated fiercely in the dark sky. Several huge cracks appeared on the walls of the cage, spreading in all directions. The entire cage of darkness began to tremble violently, as if it was unable to bear the burden and would collapse at any moment. In the dark prison, the demonic qi and black clouds churned violently. The demon king of Lifeng immediately let out a panicked roar. How is this possible? You lowly reptile, how could you shake my cage? Ji Tianqing saw that the power of the seal of mountains and rivers was indeed strong, and his eyes were filled with joy. When I used the seal of mountains and rivers for the first time, I only used 10% of its power, and it was enough to shake the entire cage of darkness. He did not hesitate to cast the technique again, releasing an even more majestic true origin and injecting it into the seal of mountains and rivers. Suddenly, the seal of mountains and rivers released an even more dazzling golden light, which condensed into an even more terrifying golden pillar of light. Boom! The 200-meter-long golden pillar of light instantly pierced through the boundless darkness, and once again struck the barrier of the cage of darkness. Amidst the deafening noise, a huge hole was blasted open in the black light barrier, and dense cracks appeared. The golden pillar of light passed through the hole and disappeared in the blink of an eye. However, the cracks around the hole were rapidly extending and expanding, causing the entire cage of darkness to be on the verge of collapse. Seeing that the cage of darkness was about to break, the demon king of Lifeng could no longer maintain his calm and roared furiously. Bastard! Little bastard, don't even think about escaping from my suppression. The dozens of demonic clouds hidden in the darkness immediately gathered together and condensed into a 100-meter-tall humanoid beast. It was a gigantic beast covered in pitch-black scales. Its limbs were extremely thick and sturdy, and its head was huge. It had a wide and flat mouth, and there were several rows of sharp barbs on its spine. Moreover, it had a huge crocodile-like tail, which was covered in black barbs. This ferocious-looking humanoid beast was the true form of the demon king of Lifeng. It roared angrily and pounced on Ji Tianqing as fast as lightning, waving its pair of giant claws and smashing down. Its claws were the size of a 2-story building, and the black claws were sharp enough to crush a 1,000-meter-tall mountain. If Ji Tianqing was hit by the huge claws, he would be severely injured even if he did not die. However, Ji Tianqing did not retreat. He looked coldly at the demon king of Lifeng, and once again activated the power of the seal of mountains and rivers. Dragon shadow of mountains and rivers. The seal of mountains and rivers once again released a dazzling golden light, which condensed into a 300-meter-long golden spear shadow. It erupted with a power that could destroy everything and blasted at the demon king of Lifeng. The demon king of Lifeng felt the terrifying power of the golden spear shadow. His body immediately trembled, and his eyes widened in horror. He subconsciously stopped pouncing and wanted to avoid the bombardment of the golden spear shadow. However, he was too close to Ji Tianqing, and the speed of the golden spear shadow was too fast. Everything was too late. Kaboom! A thunderous sound burst out and reverberated violently in the dark cage. The powerful golden spear shadow instantly pierced through the demon king of Liefeng's huge claws and blasted his thick and sturdy left shoulder that was covered in scales. The demon king of Lifeng was immediately blasted away and slammed into the dark cage's barrier. Boom! In the dull loud sound, the dark light barrier was smashed and completely collapsed. The golden spear shadow pierced through the demon king of Lifeng's left shoulder and flew out of the dark cage, disappearing into the sky. The dark cage finally broke into pieces, turning into demonic chi that covered the sky and the earth, spreading out in all directions. The demon king of Lifeng screamed in pain. Black blood gushed out from his wounds. He fell from the sky and smashed into the dense forest. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's body flashed. He went through the rolling demonic chi and flew back to the forest. He looked down at the forest and saw the demon king of Lifeng lying miserably in the forest, still struggling. Soul-level magical weapons are indeed powerful. This is my first time using it. I haven't mastered the secret technique yet I can already release such a powerful attack. Not only did I break the dark cage, but I also severely injured the demon king of Lifeng, who is at Sky Origin Stage Level 7. Chapter 643. The Seal of Mountains and Rivers was a soul-level magic treasure. Only powerhouses in the spirit cultivation stage could unleash its full power. Moreover, in order to fully control the Seal of Mountains and Rivers, one had to master the corresponding control incantation. When the emperor gave the Seal of Mountains and Rivers to Ji Tianqing, the imperial tutor gave him a brief introduction about soul-level magic treasures. Incantation was a power that was above martial arts. Weapons and equipment below the Tianyuan level could only be called weapons. Only top Tianyuan level magic treasures that could mobilize the power of heaven and earth could be called magic instruments. Only soul-level magic treasures that were more powerful than magic instruments could be called magic treasures. In the Tianxian continent, every magic treasure was priceless. They were rare and had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Moreover, every magic treasure had its corresponding secret control incantation. Unfortunately, the emperor only gave the Seal of Mountains and Rivers to Ji Tianqing and did not give him the corresponding incantation. However, even if Ji Tianqing did not have the incantation and could only use the Seal of Mountains and Rivers to perform simple attacks, it was still very powerful. He was already satisfied, and silently planned in his heart that in the future, he would definitely find an opportunity to ask for the Seal of Mountains and Rivers from the emperor. Lifeng Demon King, it's time for you to die. Ji Tianqing looked at the demon king of Lifeng coldly and poured vital core into the Seal of Mountains and Rivers again. He was ready to kill the demon king of Lifeng in one blow. Although he did not have the incantation, forcibly activating the power of the Seal of Mountains and Rivers would consume a lot of vital core. However, he did not care. As long as he could kill the demon king of Lifeng, it would be worth it no matter how much vital core he consumed. However, at this moment, in the sky above the forest thousands of meters behind him, a mocking sneer suddenly sounded. Demon King of Lifeng, you can't even take down a worm at level 3 of the Tianyuan stage. How dare you report to the Demon King? Humph. No wonder the Lifeng tribe is getting weaker and weaker. With your abilities and tricks, you should go back to the northern desert. Don't embarrass our tribe. It was a slightly sharp male voice. His words were full of undisguised disdain and contempt. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and turned to look behind him. In the sky behind him, a skinny demon clan man wearing a blood-red robe was walking over. The male demon looked a little strange. His skin was pale and bloodless, like a corpse. His dark red waist-length hair was tied into 3 braids. A few fangs were exposed in his flat mouth, and blood was dripping from them. Although this male demon maintained his human form, he still looked ferocious and terrifying. Ji Tianqing could also clearly sense that this person's strength and aura were even more unfathomable than the Demon King of Lifeng. Vigilance flashed in his eyes as he temporarily ignored the severely injured Demon King of Lifeng and stared at the blood-robed man. At this time, Demon King Lifeng also flew into the sky and turned into a burly bald man. His whole body was stained with dark demon blood, and there was a huge bloody hole in his left arm. His entire left arm was drooping and unable to move. Even so, his aura was still fierce and ferocious. He stared at the blood-robed man with blood-red eyes and shouted in a low voice, "Shuqianjiang, how good is your blood-wing tribe? Weren't you also driven out of the Blood Cloud Valley and wandering in the ice field for many years? Moreover, Ji Tianqing was targeted by me first. Everything should be first come, first served." Before Demon King Lifeng finished his words, he was interrupted by the blood-robed man, Shuqianjiang. He looked up and laughed, and said in a contemptuous tone, "Ha ha ha ha. That's right, first come, first served is the default rule. But you have already made a move, and you failed to trap Ji Tianqing. Instead, you were injured by him. Since you didn't succeed, it's time for me to make a move. Demon King Lifeng, you stay aside. Now, I will let you see with your own eyes how I will capture Ji Tianqing, and how I will present him to His Majesty, the Demon King, and receive his reward." Demon King Lifeng was furious, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. But his strength was weaker than Shuqianjiang, and now that he was seriously injured, it was impossible for him to fall out with Shuqianjiang. He gritted his teeth and retreated to the distant sky to watch the battle. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Shuqianjiang, if this boy didn't have a magic weapon, would have already captured him. Since you are so confident, I would like to see what means you have to resist his magic weapon." Demon King Lifeng made up his mind. After Shuqianjiang was injured by the magic weapon, he would return the favor and laugh at him. At that time, he would return Shuqianjiang's words to him. However, Shuqianjiang grinned and revealed a smug sneer. "Demon King Lifeng, do you want to see me make a fool of myself? Ha ha ha, I have been secretly watching the battle for so long. If I didn't have full confidence, why would I show myself?" As he spoke, Shuqianjiang's palm surged with a bloody light, and an old scroll appeared out of thin air. It was a dark red scroll made of an unknown material, and it looked like it had a history of thousands of years. The surface of the scroll was full of cracks, and there were a few irregular gaps, as if it would be broken with a touch. However, it was this tattered scroll that was faintly emitting an extremely shocking evil power. Ji Tianqing tried to touch it with his spiritual sense, and was immediately dizzy by the bloody smell in the scroll. He suddenly realized that the extremely old scroll must also be a magic treasure. Sure enough, after Demon King Lifeng saw the ancient scroll, he was immediately stunned, and his face was full of disbelief. "Is this the scroll from that year? The relic of His Majesty Blood Emperor, the Corpse Mountain and Blood Sea map?" Demon King Lifeng's voice was trembling, and it was full of shock and a trace of jealousy. Shuqianjiang nodded and revealed a smug sneer, "That's right. This is the magic weapon that my great-grandfather, the Great Blood Emperor, personally refined. In the war thousands of years ago, the Blood Emperor fell, and the Mountain of Corpses and Blood Sea map went missing. However, my father and I spent more than 200 years, and almost searched the entire northern desert, and finally found it. With this magic weapon in hand, I can control monstrous power, and create a mountain of white bones and a boundless sea of blood. Why would I worry about not being able to revive the Bloodwing tribe?" When Shuqianjiang talked about the origin and power of the Mountain of Corpses and Blood Sea map, he was full of pride, and could be said to be in high spirits. Demon King Lifeng stared at the Mountain of Corpses and Blood Sea map, and was stunned for a long time before he came back to his senses. He nodded dejectedly, and said in a low and dry voice, "Shuqianjiang, no wonder you were so arrogant. You knew that the boy had a magic weapon to protect him, and you still dared to attack him. I didn't expect that you really found the legendary Mountain of Corpses and Blood Sea map. You win. You win, and Ji Tianqing is yours." The appearance of the Mountain of Corpses and Blood Sea map completely destroyed Demon King Lifeng's hope, and he was both shocked and jealous. Chapter 644. The severely injured Demon King Lifeng left. Only Ji Tianqing and Shuqianjiang were left in the sky above the Mangu forest. Ji Tianqing had been silent, secretly observing Xue Qianjiang. The conversation between Xue Qianjiang and Demon King Lai Feng made him understand a lot of information. He just realized that there were many people who wanted to capture him as a sacrifice to the Demon Emperor. It was definitely not just Demon King Lai Feng and Xue Qianjiang. There were even more Devil King powerhouses watching him in the dark. And Xue Qianjiang in front of him was not only the king of the Blood Wing tribe, but also the descendant of the Blood Emperor. Most importantly, Xue Qianjiang had a treasure called the Corpse Mountain Blood Sea Map. He had not figured out how to control the seal of mountains and rivers, but Xue Qianjiang obviously understood the Corpse Mountain Blood Sea Map very well. He would definitely be able to unleash a stronger power. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to flap his golden wings, explode with the fastest speed, and escape towards the northwest. Whoosh! He turned into a golden streamer, instantly piercing the sky, and flew thousands of meters away. However, Xue Qianjiang was already prepared, and chased after him with a smirk. Ha ha ha! Little bastard, don't you think it's too late to run now? Xue Qianjiang shook his blood-red robe, turned into a bloody light, and caught up with Ji Tianqing in the blink of an eye. Corpse Mountain Blood Sea Map. Xue Qianjiang roared, and activated a vast amount of demonic power, crazily injecting it into the Corpse Mountain Blood Sea Map. Suddenly, the ancient and shabby scroll unfolded, blooming a bloody light that covered the sky. Swoosh! The dark red bloody light emitted a nauseating stench of blood, dyeing half the sky red, instantly covering a radius of 20 miles. In the blink of an eye, the sky and earth within a radius of 20 miles were covered by the bloody light, turning into a boundless sea of blood. The sky and earth disappeared, and there was only an endless dark red color left between heaven and earth. Even the vast forest below was submerged by the sea of blood. Tens of thousands of towering trees were corroded into dust by the sea of blood. The waves of blood rolled and swept across the sky, like a high wall, fiercely suppressed Ji Tianqing. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to activate the power of the seal of mountains and rivers, condensing the divine golden light into a shield. Shwa! An oval-shaped golden light shield enveloped him, protecting him tightly. One after another, huge waves came crashing down and slapped on the golden light shield, making muffled booms. The golden light shield trembled under the attack, and cracks gradually appeared on its surface. Ji Tianqing was unable to fly in the air and was immediately swept into the blood sea by the huge waves, sinking and bobbing up and down in the endless blood water. Only at this moment did he notice that skeletons that covered the heavens and the earth surged out from the depths of the boundless sea of blood, and all of them charged madly towards him. He hurriedly used his true essence and activated the seal of mountains and rivers to release a golden beam of light towards the densely packed skeletons. Peng peng peng. Amidst a series of muffled sounds, tens of thousands of white skeletons were turned into dregs by the golden pillar of light and scattered in the sea of blood. However, after the golden light pillar dissipated, the sea of blood was still surging. Those shattered bone dregs, once again condensed into countless skeletons, charging over fearlessly. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of white skeletons drowned him, piling up into a mountain of white skeletons. The white skeletons crazily attacked the golden light shield, making the shield crackle and tremble. Ji Tianqing was unable to escape the sea of blood, and could only continue to inject true essence into the seal of mountains and rivers to maintain the golden light shield. Xue Qianjiang stepped on the blood waves in the air, with his hands behind his back, his blood-red robe fluttering, revealing a domineering and confident aura of an expert. His pale face revealed a complacent sneer. With a low voice he shouted, "Ji Tianqing, you have already fallen into my Corpse Mountain Blood Sea painting, don't even think about escaping. Let me give you a word of advice. It's best if you give up struggling and obediently hand over the golden seal. If not, I don't mind killing you and devouring your Kenshin bloodline." Ji Tianqing was still struggling in the sea of blood, bitterly resisting the siege of the skeleton army. Hearing Xue Qianjiang's words, he roared in a low voice, "Xue Qianjiang, the ancient demon emperor ordered to capture me as a sacrifice. How dare you kill me? Aren't you afraid of being executed by the ancient demon emperor? Shui Qianjiang suddenly laughed disdainfully. Ha ha ha. Little bastard, do you think I am as stupid as the others? I have the corpse mountain blood sea painting, and I can use this treasure to refine your Kenshin bloodline, and quickly reach the spirit cultivation realm. At that time, I will become the new blood emperor, and rule over countless tribes in the northern desert. Ji Tianqing's heart moved, as he vaguely understood something, and continued to roar, humph. Wishful thinking. Even if you reach the spirit cultivation realm, can you rule over other tribes? In the entire northern desert, are there no emperor-level experts? There are only 2. Shui Qianjiang blurted out, but stopped abruptly. He immediately reacted, and sneered contemptuously. Huh, you little bastard, you still want to trick me? Since you are so stubborn, I will fulfill your wish, and turn you into a pool of blood now. Shui Qianjiang said as he waved his palms with a ferocious look, and displayed an ancient and mysterious skill. As his palms drew a mysterious trajectory, he controlled the power of the corpse mountain blood sea painting, and the entire blood sea immediately surged. After a few breaths, a huge whirlpool with a radius of 1,000 meters appeared in the center of the blood sea, and it spun rapidly. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The huge blood whirlpool spun rapidly, and the surrounding seawater flew up into the sky, gradually forming a wall of blood waves. A terrifying devouring power that seemed to be able to swallow the heavens and the earth erupted from the whirlpool, and immediately enveloped Ji Tianqing. Suddenly, he involuntarily flew into the huge whirlpool. The whirlpool contained a terrifying strangling power, and once he was swallowed into the whirlpool, he would immediately be strangled into pieces. At the moment of life and death, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to consume 50% of his power, and desperately activated the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. Dragon Shadow of Mountains and Rivers. With his angry roar, the Seal of Mountains and Rivers suddenly expanded 10,000 times, and became the size of a house. Every line on the Seal of Mountains and Rivers was clearly distinguishable, and it bloomed with a sacred golden light that covered the sky, and condensed into a huge and terrifying spear shadow. It was a 1,000-meter-long spear shadow, like a golden dragon, containing the power to destroy everything and destroy the heavens and the earth. The dragon spear shadow actually made a realistic dragon roar, and fiercely blasted into the huge whirlpool in the middle of the blood sea. At this moment, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to activate his power to the limit, and finally displayed 30% of the power of the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. Boom! In the deafening loud noise, the 1,000-meter-long dragon spear shadow fiercely blasted into the whirlpool of the blood sea, and the whirlpool collapsed on the spot, rolling up a monstrous blood wave. The whirlpool was blasted into pieces, and the huge waves spread out in all directions, immediately turning the entire blood sea upside down. Chapter 645. The whirlpool in the middle of the blood sea collapsed, and the violent power spread to the surroundings. In just a few breaths, the whole blood sea was completely chaotic and fell apart. Amidst the loud rumbling, monstrous waves rolled up in the sea of blood, and a huge crack appeared. An endless amount of blood flowed out of the crack, and its power was also rapidly draining away. Seeing this scene, Shui Qianjiang's face immediately changed. He was shocked and roared angrily. Bastard! You damned reptile, how dare you break this king's family heirloom? In Shui Qianjiang's eyes, the Blood Emperor's corpse mountain blood sea map was his family's treasure, extremely precious and powerful. This treasure was his hope to break through to the spirit refining realm and revitalize the Blood Wing tribe. But now, Ji Tianqing had broken a crack in the mountain of corpses and blood sea painting. His heart was aching so much that it was about to bleed. Ji Tianqing ignored him and flew to the crack without hesitation. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianqing passed through the crack and finally escaped from the blood sea. He returned to the dense forest, and once again saw the dark green forest and the sky above his head. He only felt incomparably familiar. At the same time, Shui Qianjiang put away the corpse mountain blood sea map, and held the old scroll with both hands, carefully examining it. Seeing a finger-long crack on the scroll, his whole face was distorted with heartache. The Corpse Mountain Blood Sea map was already very old, and now with a crack, not only was its power greatly reduced, but it also took a lot of effort and resources to repair it. Ji Tianqing, you little bastard, I'm going to tear you to shreds. Xue Qianjiang roared angrily, put the Corpse Mountain Blood Sea map into the spatial ring, and crazily rushed towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's power was more than half consumed, and his fighting power was very weak, and his face was as pale as paper. He did not want to be entangled with Xue Qianjiang, and immediately flapped his golden wings to escape. Xue Qianjiang pursued relentlessly, turning into a blood-colored light blade that streaked across the sky, and began his pursuit as fast as lightning. In just a few breaths of time, Xue Qianjiang had caught up with Ji Tianqing. The distance between the two of them was shortened to about 300 meters. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's heart was burning with anxiety, and in a moment of desperation, he had no choice but to use the flying sword's secret technique. Swish! He activated the sword embryo in his body and it flew out of his body, transforming into a 3-meter-long golden sword. Then, he stepped on the giant golden sword and flew toward the northwest as fast as he could. Back in the giant spirit city, Ji Tianqing had once relied on this secret technique to escape the pursuit of the giant spirit god. At that time, Zhuling Shen had half a step into the spirit refining realm and was much stronger than Xue Qianjiang. Even Zhuling Shen could not catch up with Ji Tianqing. How could Xue Qianjiang catch up with him? In the blink of an eye, the distance between Ji Tianqing and Xue Qianjiang had increased by several hundred meters. After 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing had left Xue Qianjiang more than 10 miles away. Not long after, his figure disappeared into the clouds above the forest, completely escaping from Xue Qianjiang's pursuit. Xue Qianjiang was filled with unwillingness as he chased for a quarter of an hour, but in the end, he had no choice but to give up. He stood in the sky, panting violently, and cursed in rage, Ji Tianqing. You damn bastard, the next time I see you, I will definitely take your dog life. After roaring a few words, his anger dissipated a little, and he turned and flew away. In the evening, Ji Tianqing finally rushed back to the central state city and returned to the monarch mansion. Not long after he returned to the Tianqing palace, Ji Ku and Yan heard the news and rushed over to meet him. Seeing his pale face and exhausted appearance, the two of them were immediately filled with worry and hurriedly asked him what happened. Brother Tianqing, what happened? Why is your face so pale? Brother Tianqing, did you fight with someone? Ji Tianqing only had 30% of his true origin left, his spirit and strength were very weak, so his complexion was obviously not good. He brought Ji Ku and Yan into the study, and said solemnly, that's right, these 2 days I was rushing between the central state city and the Greenwood city, and even fought a few battles with people. Today I left the Greenwood city, and on the way back to the central state city, I was ambushed by the devil race experts in the Mangu forest. Ji Tianqing gave a simple explanation of what had happened. When Ji Ku and Yan heard, they became even more nervous and worried. What? You were ambushed by the devil race experts? The remnants of the devil race are too savage. They actually dared to step into the central state, and so unscrupulously chased after you. Ji Tianqing nodded, and said earnestly, the ancient devil emperor gave the order, and the devil kings under his command came out in full force, vowing to capture me and refine my bloodline. The devil race came in full force, and many devil king experts must have come to the central state, and are secretly moving. From now on, the two of you have to be careful, and try to stay in the Emperor Mansion and the Central State City. If there's nothing particularly important, try not to leave the Central State City. Ji Ku and Yan understood the urgency of the situation, and nodded solemnly. Ji Tianqing reminded the two of a few more things, and then entered the secret chamber to cultivate in seclusion. He sat cross-legged in the middle of the secret chamber, holding a spirit stone in each hand, and silently circulating his true origin. After a day and night of circulating his true origin finally recovered. Next, he opened the heavenly spirit heavy array, and used the powerful gravity to temper his body, and quickly improve his strength. The secret chamber was already rich in spirit chi, and he had abundant cultivation resources, so his cultivation progress was naturally fast. Coupled with the powerful effect of the heavenly spirit heavy array, his body was constantly tempering and strengthening, and his strength was rapidly improving. This time, Ji Tianqing wanted to break through to the 4th level of the heavenly origin stage in one go. North of the Greenwood City, in the Duanmu family's mansion. In a magnificent palace, in a spacious and luxurious bedroom, the second madam was sitting by the bed in a daze. Her face was very ugly, and she looked like she was heartbroken. Recalling the way Duanmu Feiyu died, she was overcome with grief, and she sobbed with a sorrowful expression. My poor Feiyu. After suffering so many years of grievances at home, I finally could hold my head high, but I was killed by a villain. Feiyu left me alone, how can I live in the future? The maid standing by the side quickly took out a handkerchief to wipe the tears of the second madam, and patiently comforted her. Madam, the dead can't be revived, don't be too sad. Don't worry, the master will soon find out the truth, find the murderer who killed the second young master, and avenge him. The second madam shook her head, and sobbed in a low voice, even if the master can find the murderer and avenge Feiyu, so what? The first madam has always been at odds with me, and she has long wanted to find a chance to drive me out of the family. Now that Feiyu is dead, I have no one to rely on. The first madam will definitely not let this go, and will definitely deal with me more severely. Chapter 646. Second madam's tone was full of despair and helplessness. She seemed to be out of her wits and in a mess. She wasn't like first madam, who was born in a rich and powerful family. Even without Duanmu Yulong, she still had the support of her maternal family. Duanmu Feiyu was her support. Now that Duanmu Feiyu was dead, her position in the Duanmu family would be even lower. The maid comforted her for a while, but it was useless. Instead, she cried even more sadly. This maid was called Yi, second madam's trusted aide. She had been by second madam's side for many years and was highly regarded and trusted. Yi saw second madam crying in despair. After a moment of contemplation, she suddenly thought of something and immediately came up with an idea. Madam, this servant has thought of a person who can help you. Second madam raised her head and looked at her with teary eyes. She asked, who can help me now? Yi said with a solemn expression, Madam, have you forgotten? Your adoptive father is still in Central Continent City. He will definitely support you and help you solve this disaster. Adoptive father? Second madam was stunned. She quickly wiped the tears from her eyes and nodded, that's right. I can still ask adoptive father for help. Although I have rarely contacted him after marrying into the Duanmu family, he has many tricks. But he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. He can definitely help me get rid of that bitch. The only person who can threaten me is first madam. Regardless of whether Feiyu was killed by her or not, she won't let go of this opportunity. I can't just sit and wait for death. I must take this opportunity to take the initiative and topple first madam as soon as possible. Only then can I get rid of my worries. Second madam had someone to rely on and her backbone, so she quickly calmed down. She thought for a moment and then had Yi bring a pen and paper. She began to write a letter to adoptive father. After she finished writing the letter, she handed it to Yi and instructed in a serious tone, Yi, immediately arrange for reliable people to send this letter to the underground ghost city in Central Continent City, as you command. Yi took the letter and quickly bowed before leaving the room. Second madam looked out the window with a gloomy expression. A cold light flashed through her eyes. Adoptive father's hands and feet are crippled and his strength is constantly declining. He has been hiding in the underground ghost city like a crazy drunkard, muddling through his days. But after all, he is experienced and good at using all kinds of sinister methods. He can definitely help me get rid of first madam. second madam was only the daughter of a small family back then. Apart from being a bit beautiful and scheming, there wasn't much else that stood out about her. Her adoptive father, Hui Yan, had contributed a lot to her being able to climb up the social ladder and successfully marry into the Duanmu family. Many people in the Duanmu family thought that after second madam woke up, she would definitely make a big fuss and cause chaos in the residence. Duanmu Huang and the other elders had already made the necessary preparations. However, in the next 2 days, second madam didn't cause any trouble. She had stayed in her room, waiting. Late at night on the third day, the maid quickly walked into the second madam's room and respectfully reported the news. "Madam, grandfather Hua has arrived. He's waiting for you in the secret room." Hearing this, second madam's spirit was suddenly shaken. Her eyes flashed with hope. Adoptive father is finally here. Come with me to the secret room. Second madam took out of the room. They entered a secret passage that led to the palace's underground and hurried to the secret room for practice. Not long after, they reached the end of the passage and came to the door of a stone room. Guard outside the door. Second madam instructed. She raised her hand to push open the stone door and entered the dimly lit secret room. This secret room wasn't big. It was only 10 meters in radius. There were many Tianyuan arrays set up inside, which were very hidden and confidential. The secret room was empty. There was only a white jade table and 2 stone stools. As soon as second madam entered the secret room, she saw a black figure sitting in front of the stone table. It was an old man in a black robe. He wasn't tall or sturdy. In fact, he looked very thin and weak. His waist was bent, and he looked a little sloppy. Under his loose black robe, it was obvious that he was missing a left arm and a right leg. His long, messy hair covered half of his face. Half of his face was exposed. There were 2 raised scars. In his deeply sunken eye sockets, there was a flickering eye. The black-robed old man sat quietly by the stone table. He was looking down at his right hand. In his skinny palm, there was a finger-long dark red flame snake. It was spiraling and dancing in a lively manner. Second madam walked to the old man and bowed respectfully. She called out, "Adoptive father." The black-robed old man was her husband, Hui Yan. Hui Yan didn't look up. He was still staring at the flame snake in his palm. He said in a low and hoarse voice, "Shut Ong, if I remember correctly, you haven't contacted me for 10 years, right? Could it be that you only think of this old man when you're in trouble?" Hearing this, second madam was a little embarrassed. She quickly bowed and explained with a smile, "Adoptive father, you've misunderstood me. Shutong knows that you don't like to deal with people. You just want to spend your days in peace, so Shutong doesn't dare to disturb you." Without waiting for second madam to finish speaking, Hui Yan interrupted her and said in a low voice, "No need to explain. If I blame you, I wouldn't have come today." Hearing this, second madam was relieved. She quickly asked, "Adoptive father, does that mean you agree?" Hui Yan said in a calm and indifferent tone, "Of course. I can help you deal with first madam and help you secure your position as madam. However, I also need you to do something for me." Second madam nodded without hesitation and said, "Don't worry, adoptive father. As long as it's within Shudong's power, I won't refuse." Hui Yan turned over his palm. The flame snake in his palm disappeared and was replaced by a scroll. He put the scroll on the stone table and said to second madam, "Adoptive father has always wanted to deal with an old matter. Now, there's finally some progress. The person in the portrait has come to Zhongzhou City. You have to find a way to find this person and capture him for me." Second madam hurriedly reached out to pick up the scroll and unfurled it. When she saw the person in the portrait, she was immediately stunned. That was because the person in the portrait was a little boy who was a little over 10 years old. Although the boy was young, he was very handsome. There was a majestic aura between his eyebrows. It was obvious that he came from a noble background. Moreover, although he was a human youth, He had long dark red hair. There was also a red flame mark on his forehead. It was quite exotic. Although second madam was puzzled, she didn't say anything. She stared at the portrait for a moment, then solemnly put away the scroll. Chapter 647. 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. It was early in the morning and the monarch's residence was as peaceful as ever. To the southeast of the mountain range, there was a mirror-like lake with a radius of 100 miles. It was Graceful Cloud Lake. The lake was surrounded by mountains and was shrouded in clouds. The lake water was so clear that one could see the bottom. It contained strands of 5-colored spirit energy that refracted colorful lights, making it seem like a dream. This lake was one of the scenic spots in the monarch's residence. Although Graceful Cloud Lake's location was a bit remote, there were always people with stories who would come here to relax and enjoy the scenery. At this moment, under a 1,000-year-old tree by the lake, there stood a beautiful woman in a long green dress. She was tall and graceful, with a pure and beautiful face. Although she didn't wear any makeup or jewelry, it couldn't hide her natural beauty. Moreover, she had an innate noble and demure temperament, like an orchid in an empty valley, quiet and fragrant. She was Ansuan, who had just become a heavenly consort not long ago. Ansuan stood under the ancient tree, her clear eyes staring at the sparkling lake. Her expression was as calm as water, but there was a hint of worry between her brows. A gentle breeze blew against her face, causing her long hair to sway and dance gently. However, this beautiful lake couldn't dispel the melancholy in her eyes or the melancholy in her heart. And the person who could make her feel melancholy was her lover, her current husband, the son of heaven, Long Yun Shao. The imperial court had already held a grand wedding for her and the son of heaven, and had even invited all the powerful cultivators of the human race to attend the ceremony. Now that she was a well-known heavenly consort, all the women in the world were envious of her. After the wedding, the son of heaven even brought her into the monarch's residence. She wasn't the imperial son, but she was able to live and cultivate in the monarch's residence as a heavenly consort. It was a most fortunate thing, and an honor for her. She ought to be happy and proud. But now, she couldn't feel happy at all. When the son of heaven chose her as his heavenly consort, she had a premonition that she would become the heavenly consort who was closest to others, but farthest from others. Now, her premonition had finally come true. On the night of the wedding, the emperor would rather drink himself into a stupor in the study room than return to his room to sleep. The emperor didn't even remove her red veil and let her sit in her room for the whole night. Although the emperor brought her into the emperor's mansion, he never looked for her again after settling her down. Half a month had passed. And Suan's uneasiness and melancholy grew stronger and stronger. Therefore, she came to Yunxiu Lake early in the morning to relax. Unknowingly, Ansuan had been standing under the tree by the lake for more than 2 hours without moving a single step. At this moment, in the sky not far behind her, there was a clear chirp of a bird and a woman's voice. Aren't you an sister? This crisp female voice broke the tranquility of the lakeside. Ansuan snapped out of her daze and turned her head to look behind her. She saw a spiritual bird with pure white feathers flying towards her. Standing on the back of the spirit bird was a woman wearing a long dress, a jade crown, and a golden hairpin. That woman was about 18 or 19 years old. She had a graceful figure and a beautiful face. Compared to Ansuan, she wasn't inferior. The only difference was that their temperaments were different. When Ansuan saw her face clearly, she was also startled. A trace of surprise appeared on her charming face. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, that white spirit bird flew to the lakeside and landed. The woman in the palace dress jumped onto the grass by the lakeside and walked towards Ansuan. Sister An. Oh, no, I should call you heavenly consort now. The woman in the palace dress arrived in front of Ansuan and bowed. She asked with a smile, Heavenly consort, why are you here? Ansuan looked at the woman in the palace dress and frowned in confusion. She asked, Huixin, why are you in the emperor's mansion? Without a doubt, the woman in the palace dress was Lan Huixin. She saw that Ensuan's expression was strange and seemed to be deeply worried. She asked with concern, Heavenly consort, you just got married to the emperor. This is a joyous occasion for the whole world to celebrate. You don't seem to be happy. Could it be that something happened? When Ensuan heard Lan Huixin's words, her lips curled into a self-mocking smile. She shook her head lightly and said, Little sister Huixin, don't call me heavenly consort. You should just call me sister. And Lan Huixin widened her eyes slightly and revealed a puzzled expression. Sister, what's wrong? Could it be that you and the emperor quarreled? Ensuan shook her head again and said calmly, the emperor is incomparably honorable. He's also my husband. How could I quarrel with him? Lan Huixin revealed a concerned expression and pretended to be worried. She said, Sister, you must have something on your mind for you to come to Yunxiu Lake alone to relax. If you don't mind, why don't you tell little sister about it? Perhaps you'll feel better after you say it. And Ensuan was indeed feeling depressed. She couldn't find anyone to talk to. At this moment, she saw that Lan Huixin was full of concern. After hesitating for a moment, she nodded and said, Thank you for your concern, little sister. It's just that I've been alone for too long and that's why I'm feeling depressed. Everyone knows that a heavenly concubine has an honorable status. To be able to live together with the emperor is a marriage that's cultivated over 3 lifetimes. However, the world doesn't know that when you love someone without any reservations, but that person treats you like a dispensable decoration, what kind of situation and feeling is that? And Ensuan opened up her heart and slowly told Lan Huixin the words that had been bottled up in her heart for a long time. Lan Huixin listened quietly and comforted her from time to time. She appeared to be very gentle and kind. She was also quite concerned about Ensuan. However, Ensuan didn't notice that in the depths of Lan Huixin's eyes, there was a hint of a sneer that was gloating over Ensuan's misfortune. The more Ensuan was ignored, the more depressed she felt. Lan Huixin, on the other hand, became happier and more relieved. Compared to Yunyao, Lan Huixin hated Ensuan even more. After all, Ensuan became a heavenly concubine and snatched away the position that she yearned for even in her dreams. After a long time, Ensuan finally finished speaking the words in her heart and vented her depression. Only then did she calm down. She turned her head to look at Lan Huixin and said with a sincere expression, Younger sister Huixin, thank you for accompanying me to relax and listen to me nag about these things. Lan Huixin hurriedly waved her hands and said, Older sister, you're too polite. Actually, I can't help you much. This is a matter of your relationship with the emperor. If you want to untie the knot in your heart, you must muster up the courage to speak to the emperor clearly. After all, you're now a legitimate heavenly concubine. You don't have to swallow your anger and compromise like this anymore. And Ensuan shook her head slightly and said with a bitter smile, I actually want to have a good talk with the emperor and let him understand my feelings. However, ever since I entered the monarch estate, I haven't seen him again. Every time I go to find him, the guards say that he's in closed-door cultivation. Hearing this, Lan Huixin immediately frowned and said doubtfully, That's impossible. In this half a month, I've already seen the emperor several times. Chapter 648. However, Lan Huixin quickly stopped halfway through her sentence and did not continue speaking. When Ensuan heard this, her body trembled and her face turned pale. Her emotions, which she had finally managed to calm down, were instantly thrown into chaos. She only felt a sharp pain in her heart, as if it had been stabbed by a sword. It was so painful that she couldn't breathe. When Lan Huixin saw her reaction, she hurriedly waved her small hands and explained anxiously, Big sister, I didn't say anything just now. Don't take it to heart. And Ensuan's heart had already been stabbed by a sword. How could she not take it to heart? She took a deep breath and suppressed the pain in her heart. She tried her best to remain calm and asked, Little sister Huixin, is what you said just now true? Why does the Son of Heaven visit Yunyao every 2 or 3 days? How do you know? Lan Huixin pretended to be hesitant and remained silent. She looked like she wanted to say something but stopped herself. And Suan patiently asked, "Little sister Huixin, the Son of Heaven is infatuated with Yunyao. This is something everyone knows. You don't have to worry about it. There's no harm in saying it." Lan Huixin nodded and said with a serious expression, "I was able to enter the monarch estate because I was saved by Yunyao. I stayed by her side as a female official and managed the maids in Yunyao's palace. I know very well who goes in and out of Yunyao's palace every day. In the past 2 months, the Son of Heaven would come to Yunyao's palace every few days to find Yunyao. I saw this with my own eyes. Every time they met, they would stay in a secret room for about half a day. Outsiders aren't allowed to enter the secret room. I don't know what they're doing either." When she heard this, Suan's body trembled again and her face turned as pale as paper. Her heart hurt even more. Her vision turned black and she almost couldn't stand straight. A man and a woman alone in a room, and no one is allowed to see them. What else can they do? Suan revealed a bitter and cold smile. Her aura became desolate. It was obvious that she was heartbroken. Lan Huixin hurriedly supported her and muttered angrily, "Big sisterin, you're a heavenly consort now. You can't continue to endure this. Otherwise, you'll be even more miserable in the future. If I were you, I definitely wouldn't sit by and do nothing about this. After all, the emperor has already taken you as his concubine, and he still has an affair with another woman. This is really immoral and damaging to the dignity of the imperial court. Although I also think that it's inappropriate for them to do this, I don't have the right to talk to the emperor, nor do I dare to criticize Yunyao. After all, I'm her servant." And Suan's heart was filled with despair, and a strong sense of anger began to well up within it. After hearing Lan Huixin's words, she nodded with a determined expression and said, "That's right. Although I love the Son of Heaven deeply, I will not compromise to this extent. I'm going to look for Yunyao now and talk to her face to face." As soon as she finished speaking, Suan turned around and prepared to leave Yunxiu Lake and head towards Yunyao Palace. Lan Huixin hurriedly pulled her towards the spirit beasts and birds by the shore. "Sisterin, it just so happens that I'm also going back to Yunyao Palace. Let me take you there." Suan didn't say anything. She only nodded. Soon after, the two of them left Yunxiu Lake on the spirit beasts and flew towards Yunyao Palace. About an hour later, the spirit beasts and birds landed outside Yunyao Palace. After the two of them landed, Lan Huixin hurriedly instructed Suan, "Sisterin, I'm going back to the palace first. Come visit me later. If Yunyao asks, you mustn't say that I told her. I'm now her official. If she finds out that I told you these things, she definitely won't let me off." Suan nodded with a solemn expression and said, "Sister Huixin, don't worry. I'm already very grateful that you're willing to tell me these things. Of course, I'll keep it a secret for you." Lan Huixin was finally relieved. She stepped through the gates of Yunyao Palace and returned to the palace. Suan stood outside the palace for about a quarter of an hour. Then, she walked up to the main gate and informed the guards of her purpose for coming. "Go report to Miss Yunyao. Tell her that Heavenly Consort Suan has come to visit and wants to talk to her face to face. Heavenly Consort, please wait here for a moment." The guards bowed and hurriedly entered the palace to report the news. Suan stood outside the gates and waited patiently. Not long after, the guards returned and led her into Yunyao Palace. They walked towards the reception hall. When she entered the hall, she saw that Yunyao was already sitting at the head of the table. Yunyao was looking at her with a calm expression. Yunyao didn't know that Heavenly Consort was coming. "Please excuse me for not going out to meet you." Yunyao stood up and bowed when she saw Suan enter the hall. She then instructed the maid beside her, "Prepare a seat for Heavenly Consort and serve her tea." Suan walked into the hall and stood still. She looked at Yunyao coldly and said in an indifferent tone, "No need." I'm only here to talk to you face to face. I'll leave once I'm done. Yunyao frowned slightly when she saw An-Suwen's reaction. She was secretly puzzled. It seems like An-Suwen came with ill intentions. But I didn't offend her. Thinking up to this point, she waved her hand and dismissed the maids in the hall. You're all dismissed. After the maids left, only Yunyao and An-Suwen were left in the hall. At this moment, An-Suwen finally spoke. Miss Yunyao, everyone knows that the emperor is infatuated with you. Why don't you accept him? Yunyao's expression changed slightly. She frowned and asked in the same indifferent tone, Heavenly Consort, did you come here today to denounce me? I have nothing to do with the emperor, nor do I have any romantic feelings for him. Why should I accept him? Humph. And Suwen gave a cold humph. She sneered and said, Fine. Since you have nothing to do with the emperor, then why are you still in contact with him? Why do you have a private relationship with him? Everyone knows that Yunyao is as cold as ice and frost. She's like a celestial fairy who doesn't eat the food of mortals. I didn't expect that this is just the ignorance of the world. They don't know the true nature of a celestial fairy and would actually do such a disgraceful thing that damages the dignity of the imperial court. Although An-Suwen spoke elegantly, the meaning behind her words was obviously scolding her for being shameless and seducing the emperor, Long Yunxiao. Even though Yunyao was an indifferent and cold celestial fairy, she was still infuriated by An-Suwen's words. Her expression turned cold and a cold light flashed through her eyes. She shouted in a low voice, Heavenly Consort. Have you ever thought of the consequences of framing me without distinguishing right from wrong? Not to mention you, even if Long Yunxiao was here, he wouldn't dare to sully my chastity. An-Suwen gave tit for tat and sneered, Hee hee, the emperor loves you. Of course he wouldn't bear to criticize you like this. However, I want to make it clear to you today. No matter what kind of entanglement you had with the emperor, it's all in the past. Since I've already become the heavenly consort, I definitely won't tolerate you having private dealings with the emperor. If you really have nothing to do with the emperor, then you should make a clean break with him and keep yourself clean. Although this is a private matter between the three of us, it's also related to the dignity of the imperial court and the human race. I hope you can conduct yourself with dignity. Otherwise, no one will be able to clean up this mess. We'll definitely become the laughingstock of the world. That's all I have to say. Please behave yourself. Chapter 649. Yunyao sat on the seat of honor and watched An-Suwen's departing figure. Her brows were tightly furrowed, and her eyes were filled with anger. Early in the morning, An-Suwen came to Yunyao Palace to look for her and scolded her to her face. She even gave her a warning. However, she didn't do anything and never had any private interactions with Long Yunxiao. An-Suwen's words were completely baffling to her, and she felt incomparably wronged. What the hell was this? Yunyao was so angry that she couldn't breathe properly. She sat on the throne for a long time before she finally calmed down. 15 minutes later, she suppressed her anger. Her expression and temperament returned to normal, and she became as cold as ice again. She stood up and walked out of the main hall, about to leave Yunyao Palace. When she walked out of the main hall, she happened to meet the female official, Lan Huixin. Lan Huixin saw that her aura was cold and her expression was indifferent. She quickly went up to her and asked with concern, Big Sister Yun, what happened? Where are you going? Yunyao glanced at her and said calmly, It's nothing. I'm going to Tianqing Palace to discuss some important matters with Imperial Prince Tianqing. No matter who comes to visit today, they will all be rejected. After saying that, she rode her spirit crane into the sky and rushed towards Tianqing Palace. Lan Huixin stood at the entrance of the main hall and watched the spirit crane fly into the distance. Her lips curled into a sneer. Humph. After being scolded by that silly woman An-Suwen, you're going to complain to Ji Tianqing with a heart full of grievances? I'd like to see if An-Suwen can still keep her position as heavenly consort after the three of you make a fuss. When Yunyao arrived at Tianqing Palace, it was already close to noon. The guards guarding Tianqing Palace's entrance were very familiar with her. When they saw her, they immediately opened the door to welcome her. The guards led Yunyao into Tianqing Palace. They didn't go to the reception hall and went straight to Ji Tianqing's study. Not long after Yunyao waited in the study, Ji Tianqing rushed over after hearing the news. When Ji Tianqing stepped into the study, Yunyao's eyes stared at him. She carefully sized him up and immediately revealed a look of surprise. Although Ji Tianqing was dressed as usual, wearing a white robe with cloud patterns and a clear jade belt around his waist, he appeared to be in high spirits and extraordinarily handsome. However, Yunyao could clearly feel that Ji Tianqing's aura had become even more domineering and fierce. It seemed that his power had improved again. At this moment, Ji Tianqing walked over and sat down in front of her. He smiled and asked, "Yao Yao, what are you looking at? It's only been a few days and you don't recognize me anymore?" Yunyao ignored his teasing and asked seriously, "Tianqing, I haven't seen you for a few days. It seems that your cultivation has made a breakthrough again?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "That's right. On my way back from Azurewood City, I was ambushed by 2 Devil King powerhouses. After I came back, I went into seclusion to cultivate. After 6 days and 6 nights of seclusion, I finally broke through to the 4th level of Sky Origin stage." Hearing this, Yunyao was shocked. She praised with a complicated tone, "It's only been 2 months since you broke through to the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage. Tianqing, the speed of your growth is really unprecedented in the past and will never be surpassed." Although Ji Tianqing accidentally created another miracle, which made his sweetheart shocked and praised him, he wasn't arrogant. However, he wasn't arrogant and complacent. He calmly explained, "Yao Yao, you know how powerful the sword god is. I have the bloodline of Kenshin, so my cultivation speed is much faster than ordinary geniuses. For me, there is no bottleneck from the 1st level to the 9th level. It's a smooth journey. Only when I break through a level, I will encounter a bottleneck and spend more time." Luckily, Yunyao and Ji Tianqing had known each other for a long time. She had seen him turn from a useless young master to a peerless genius. She was shocked by Ji Tianqing too many times. She had gradually gotten used to his monstrous talent and the miracles he created. The two chatted for a while. Ji Tianqing asked seriously, "Yao Yao, why did you come to see me?" Yunyao said seriously, "This morning, someone from the Hidden Cloud Pavilion reported to me that they found out about the Duanmu clan. I don't know what happened to the Duanmu clan. The First Lady couldn't bear the pain of losing her son. She suddenly lost her mind and stabbed Duanmu Huang. She was locked up in the clan's forbidden area. The position of the First Lady of the Duanmu clan is vacant. The clan has been in a bit of chaos recently. It's not peaceful." When Ji Tianqing heard the news, he was stunned for a moment before he revealed a playful smile. Duanmu Yulong has been dead for 3 months. If the First Lady couldn't bear the pain of losing her son, she would have gone crazy long ago. How could she only go crazy now? It seems that the Duanmu clan has started to fight among themselves. The First Lady obviously lost. Yunyao nodded and said, "That's right. The more they fight among themselves, the more advantageous it is for us. The internal strife will gradually weaken the Duanmu clan's power. It will also make Duanmu Huang busy and unable to deal with our plan." Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment. Then, he said seriously, "Let's wait and see. Let them fight among themselves. Yao Yao, tell the Hidden Cloud Pavilion to keep an eye on the Duanmu clan. If there's any news, tell me as soon as possible. As for the next plan, we'll act according to the situation." The two had just finished discussing business when hurried footsteps were heard outside the study. Then, Ji Ku's voice sounded outside the door. "Big brother Tianqing, something bad has happened." Ji Tianqing frowned. He waved his hand and released a golden light to open the door. Ji Ku rushed into the study anxiously and quickly said, "Big brother Tianqing, Yen is missing." Hearing this news, Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao's expressions changed, and they stood up. Yen is missing? What's going on? Where did he go? When did he go missing? Ji Ku quickly explained, yesterday morning, junior brother Yen went to Zhongzhou City to contact the Hidden Cloud Pavilion's people and send them information as usual. He should have come back last night, but he hasn't come back yet. I contacted Steward Li of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion, but Steward Li said that Yen didn't go to receive any information yesterday. Upon hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao immediately understood that something must have happened to Yen The two of them walked out of the study without hesitation and quickly rushed outside. Ji Ku quickly followed and wanted to look for Yen with them. However, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and told her, Ku, Ao Yao and I will go to Zhongzhou City to look for Yen You stay in Tianqing Palace and don't leave. Wait for our news. Ji Ku had no choice but to stay in Tianqing Palace. She said worriedly, Big brother Tianqing, you must be careful. Don't let anything happen to you. Ji Tianqing nodded and summoned Xianyu from the 100 treasures brocade pouch. He and Yun Yao rode Xianyu out of Tianqing Palace and rushed to the exit of the monarch mansion. After the two of them left the monarch mansion and entered Zhongzhou City, they first rushed to the branch of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion and asked Steward Li about the specific situation. Chapter 650. The Hidden Cloud Pavilion was an intelligence organization nurtured by the Yun family. It was best at gathering information, investigating clues, and assassinating. The Yun family had set up 3 branches of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion in Zhongzhou City, with more than 300 secret agents stationed there. Deacon Li was in charge of the Southern City branch, with more than 100 secret agents working under him. After receiving Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's orders, Deacon Li immediately sent half of his men to investigate in the city. In everyone's eyes, Yen Er's route from the Monarch Mansion to the Southern City branch was fixed. Moreover, Yen had important matters to attend to, so he wouldn't wander around the city. He went missing on the way to the Southern City branch, narrowing the scope of the investigation. They should be able to find him soon. Deacon Li saw that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were full of worries, so he comforted them. Eldest Miss, young Master Ji, please rest assured. The secret agents will definitely be able to find the news in 12 hours at most. Please don't be impatient and wait patiently for a while. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked Deacon Li to withdraw for the time being. He and Yun Yao stayed in the secret chamber, quietly waiting for the results. Time passed by quietly and 12 hours passed quickly. However, the secret agents hadn't found the result yet. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao both realized that the situation was not good. Yen Er's disappearance was probably very complicated. Yun Yao called Deacon Li and asked him about the situation. Deacon Li's expression was a bit solemn and he said in a low and deep voice, Eldest Miss, this matter is very complicated. The other party did it very covertly and their methods are very clever. According to this subordinate's estimation, the other party is most likely an assassin who is proficient in ambushes and assassinations, and it was premeditated long ago. Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and asked, Deacon Li, in that case, you can conclude that Yen was kidnapped by the assassin? Deacon Li quickly nodded and said, that's right. Those assassins are not weak and their methods are very ingenious. Even with the strength of our Hidden Cloud Pavilion, it's difficult to find the result in a short time. Yun Yao frowned and muttered to herself, there are only a few assassin organizations that can be compared to the Hidden Cloud Pavilion. Who could have done it? She and Ji Tianqing looked at each other, and a cold light flashed in their eyes. Obviously, they had guessed the result. If it wasn't done by the demon race, then it was most likely done by the Duanmu clan. Deacon Li nodded again and said, that's right. According to the information sent back by the spies, this subordinate also thinks that the Duanmu clan is the most suspicious. Previously, we investigated that there were a few experts from the Soul Herding Hall who appeared near the Wufeng Manor and hid in the dark for 3 days. Just now, I have already ordered the spies to focus on investigating Wu Fengzhuang. I believe there will be results soon. Hearing Deacon Li's words, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao felt slightly relieved. The two of them suppressed their worries and waited patiently in the secret chamber for another 6 hours. Finally, Deacon Li rushed to the secret room again and reported the news in a hurry. Reporting to Mr. Ji, the spies have already investigated the results. Yesterday morning, Yan was attacked near the Wufeng Manor and was captured by the experts of the Soul Herding Hall. Those experts of the Soul Herding Hall captured Yan in the Black Cloud Alley and then disappeared completely. Hearing this result, Yun Yao suddenly frowned and asked doubtfully, Yan was captured in the Black Cloud Alley? Why did the people of the Soul Herding Hall go there? Deacon Li shook his head with a dignified expression. This subordinate doesn't know, but this subordinate has sent people into the underground dark city and is doing his best to investigate. When Ji Tianqing heard the two unfamiliar names Black Cloud Alley and Underground Dark City, he immediately showed a puzzled expression. What does the Underground Dark City mean? Yin Yao motioned Deacon Li to retreat and patiently explained to Ji Tianqing, Tianqing, you just came to Zhongzhou City not long ago and have been busy with cultivation, so you haven't heard of the Underground Dark City. The Underground Dark City is a dark underground city hidden under the surface of Zhongzhou City. Speaking of the origin of this underground dark city, it has to be traced back to the ancient times. At that time, the demon army swept the world and almost occupied the entire continent. The demon army besieged Zhongzhou City. The experts of the human race, demon race and water race fought desperately and launched an earth-shattering war. In that earth-shattering war, more than half of Zhongzhou City was destroyed and turned into a dilapidated city. The earth in a radius of hundreds of miles turned into an abyss. The remaining half of Zhongzhou City also sank into the abyss and was swallowed by the darkness. Many years later, the demon army was defeated by the alliance of various races and retreated to the northern desert. They retreated and recuperated. The monarch mansion built this Zhongzhou City on the abyss and let Zhongzhou return to peace and tranquility. After listening to Yun Yao's explanation, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, so that's how it is. Now under this Zhongzhou City, there is an abandoned ancient city from the ancient times. However, thousands of years have passed. Didn't that underground abandoned ancient city turn into ruins long ago? Yun Yao shook her head lightly and explained, in the ancient times, although that ancient city was not as prosperous as today's Zhongzhou City, it was still the most majestic city under the heavens. Although more than half of that ancient city was destroyed and sunk deep underground, many ancient buildings were still preserved and there were many broken formations protecting it. So far, the abandoned ancient city was still preserved. Many martial artists from all walks of life lived there, and there were also many evil people hiding there. That abandoned ancient city became a place to hide evil. It was full of darkness and murderous aura, so it was called the Underground Dark City. There are several entrances to the Underground Dark City. Black Cloud Alley is one of the entrances. Ji Tianqing roughly understood what kind of place the Underground Dark City was. He asked with a grave expression, since the Underground Dark City is so dark and violent, Yan was captured by Soul Shepherd Hall's people. His situation must be very dangerous. However, why didn't Soul Shepherd Hall's people take him back to Duanmu family's Qingmu City, but instead to the Underground Dark City? Yin Yao frowned and thought for a moment. She said in a low voice, Duanmu family controls half of the medicine business in the Zhongzhou continent. Of course, their power has penetrated the Underground Dark City. I remember that Duanmu family has a shadow palace in the Underground Dark City. It specializes in selling and trading some materials and poisons that are strictly prohibited by the imperial court. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a cold light. He said in a cold voice, so, Yan is likely to be captured to the Shadow Palace? What are we waiting for? Let's enter the Underground Dark City now and go to the Shadow Palace to rescue Yan Yun Yao shook her head gently and said, Tianqing, don't be impatient. Let's wait for the news from the Hidden Cloud Pavilion first. The two continued to wait. Very quickly, another 6 hours passed. So far, the two had been waiting for a whole day. Deacon Li entered the secret room again and reported respectfully, "Young Miss, young Master Ji, the spies have investigated clearly. Yen was indeed captured to the underground dark city. He was taken into a dilapidated manor and never appeared again." Chapter 651. The result of Deacon Li's report caused Ji Tianqing and Yunyao to be stunned for a moment. Yen was captured and brought into a dilapidated manor? He was actually not captured and brought to the Umbra Palace. What exactly does the Duanmu clan want to do? The two of them glanced at each other in confusion, then hurriedly stood up and left the secret room to rush towards Black Cloud Alley. Deacon Li originally wanted to send a team of spies to protect them, but Ji Tianqing refused. The spies of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion are mostly at the 7th or 8th level of the Origin Core stage, and are utterly unable to be of any help. Deacon Li, you only need to send a spy to lead the way for us. Since Ji Tianqing had spoken, Deacon Li naturally did as he was told, and sent a young spy that was astute and agile to lead the way for Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. The three of them left the Hidden Cloud Pavilion's branch and rushed towards Black Cloud Alley with their fastest speed. After an hour, the three of them arrived at Black Cloud Alley. When Ji Tianqing saw the situation in the alley clearly, he only felt disbelief. This was a dirty and old alley, and both sides of the alley were low earthen houses, tiled houses, and wooden sheds. The ground was full of potholes and was covered in muddy water. Walking in the alley, Ji Tianqing saw over 10 martial artists in ragged clothes that had disheveled hair and collapsed under the eaves of the sheds by the side of the road. There were also a few martial artists that wore tattered armor that walked out from the depths of the alley, and their footsteps were unsteady as they limped through the muddy water. They hadn't even walked close when the stench of alcohol assaulted their nostrils, causing them to raise their eyebrows. These were obviously a few drunkards. Ji Tianqing found it hard to believe that there was actually such a dirty, disorderly, and vile alley in the flourishing Central Continent city. If it wasn't for Yunyao telling him that the depths of Black Cloud Alley was the entrance to the underground city, he would truly suspect that he had entered the slums. The three of them calmly and quietly passed through the alley, and after walking for over 1,000 meters, they arrived at the end of Black Cloud Alley. Before them was a low and old house, and the dilapidated door was dyed with dark red bloodstains. There were 2 huge red lanterns hanging at the door, which were still lit with a dim yellow light. Ji Tianqing walked into the house, past the fake mountains and pond in the courtyard, and arrived at the dimly lit hall. A stooped old man in a black robe with white hair and beard silently appeared behind the three of them. "Young man, this is not a place you should be." A low and hoarse voice rang out. It contained an eerie ghostly aura, causing people to feel a chill down their backs. Ji Tianqing turned his head and couldn't help but frown when he saw the appearance of the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man was hunched over. His face was pale and bloodless. He was missing an eye, and there were several hideous sword wounds. His ears were also bald, as if they had been shaved off. Such a stooped old man with skin as dry as tree bark and a terrifying face looked like a mummy that had crawled out of a grave. However, Yunyao had told Ji Tianqing that this black-robed old man was the legendary ghost servant, one of the gatekeepers of the Dark City. No one knew the ghost servant's cultivation level. He only had an eerie ghostly aura around him, which made him seem unfathomable. However, even a Sky Origin Stage 6 or 7 powerhouse wouldn't dare to act rashly in front of the ghost servant. "Senior, we have something to do in the Dark City. Please make an exception." Ji Tianqing bowed to the ghost servant. After explaining the purpose of their visit, he handed over 3 spiritual stones. The ghost servant glanced at Ji Tianqing with his empty eye and grinned with his sparse teeth. "Hee, little guy, you're quite sensible." He reached out his shriveled hand and took the 3 spiritual stones and put them into his interspatial ring. Then, he led Ji Tianqing and the other 2 out of the hall and walked into a dark secret room. On the floor of the secret room, there was an extremely complicated and mysterious array. When the ghost servant opened the array, an underground passage appeared on the ground. The entrance of the cave was dark and cold. It was obviously leading to the dark city. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the young secret agent entered the underground passage one by one. They walked along the dark and cold passage and went underground. The passage was winding and it was unknown how far it went underground. Until 2 hours later, when a bridge appeared in front of the passage, there was some light in the surroundings. Ji Tianxing walked to the dark stone bridge and looked around. He couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. Under his feet was a black arch bridge that was hundreds of meters long. Under the bridge was a large river that was hundreds of meters wide. In the river, there was turbulent black water flowing endlessly, making a rumbling sound. Above his head was a dome that was thousands of meters high. That was the rock layer under the continent's central city. In the distance, there was an empty and dark sky. A dark red moon was floating in the sky, sprinkling down a dim light red light. The earth in the distance was very desolate. There were collapsed city walls, attics and halls, collapsed houses, and huge statues half hidden in the mud. The various scenes that he saw all showed how glorious this abandoned ancient city used to be. Ji Tianxing stood on the arch bridge and looked for a while. Then he crossed the stone bridge. Under the guidance of the young secret agent, he walked into the depths of the dark city. Along the way, he saw the dilapidated palaces and pavilions in all directions. There were mysterious martial artists coming in and out. Most people acted alone, wearing a wide robe and a cloak that covered their face, hiding their true face. Even if they didn't wear a cloak, they would wear a mask. Everyone was in a hurry and never talked to strangers. Inside those ruined buildings, there were many places for people to trade and sell their wares. While hurrying, Yun Yao said to Ji Tianxing with spiritual sense sound transmission, "Tianxing, although the dark city is gloomy and terrible, full of darkness and violence, there are many experts here. It can be said that there are crouching tigers and hidden dragons. You have to be careful here. Although it is full of a large number of evil and vicious things that are strictly prohibited from circulating, there are also many rare treasures. Some rare treasures often appear. The experts of the major forces in Zhongzhou City will also change their appearance and quietly come here to fish for treasures, or to buy rare materials and so on." On the way, Yun Yao introduced the dark city to Ji Tianxing in detail. Ji Tianxing remembered her words, thinking that it might be useful in the future. Half an hour later, the young secret agent took the two of them to the outside of an ancient and dilapidated manor. This manor covered an area of 2,000 meters. It should have been a magnificent, noble and illustrious mansion. However, the war in ancient times caused half of the mansion to collapse. Many houses and palaces had collapsed, turning into mud and gravel on the ground, revealing pieces of broken fences and walls. The ground paved with black slabs was cracked with numerous gullies, and many piles of gravel were scattered. The whole manor was silent and dark. There was no light at all, like a lifeless dead land. Chapter 652. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were hiding in a dark corner outside the manor. The three of them secretly observed for a while. The manor was still dead silent, and there was no trace of light or shadow. Ji Tianxing was worried about Yen's safety, so he decided to take action. He instructed the young secret agent, "You stay here and keep a lookout outside the manor. Be ready to help us at any time." The young secret agent cupped his hands and bowed. He used his spiritual sense to send a voice transmission. After that, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao restrained their auras and quietly sneaked into the dilapidated manor. They moved towards the depths of the manor. Both of their movements were light and cautious. They did not make any sound. After 15 minutes, both of them passed through the ruins and arrived at the depths of the manor. They arrived outside a huge black palace. This palace was the main hall of the manor. Although the walls were covered with cracks, the entire palace was slightly tilted and looked like it was about to collapse. However, Ji Tianqing detected that this palace was protected by the Heaven Origin Grand Formation, and there were martial artists' auras in the palace. Not only that, but there were also 3 gloomy and dark true origin fluctuations hidden in a few old houses at the back of the palace. Ji Tianqing turned his head to look at Yun Yao and sent a voice transmission. Yao Yao, there are 4 hidden sentries at the back of the palace. However, they are only at the 8th level of the origin core stage. There's nothing to worry about. Wait for me here for a moment. I'll go and deal with them first before I can break the palace's defensive grand formation. Yun Yao nodded and sent a voice transmission. Tianqing, be careful. Ji Tianqing nodded silently. His figure flashed and flew out. After 2 breaths of time, he moved to the back of the palace and was near a few houses in the ruins. When he got closer, he used his spiritual sense to scan clearly. There were a total of 5 houses that were relatively well preserved, and 4 of them were occupied. The 4 martial artists were wearing black robes. There were soft armor and heart protection mirrors under their robes. They also carried treasured swords, concealed weapons, and crossbows. They were fully equipped. Moreover, the robes of these 4 people were embroidered with the same pattern. Their auras were similarly gloomy and contained the smell of blood. Even though the 4 of them were meditating in the room, they were still on guard at all times. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned slightly as a cold light flashed in his eyes. He thought to himself, looks like these 4 fellows are the assassins of the Soul Shepherd Hall, the ones who captured Yen Er. Relying on his strength, killing 4 8th-level origin core stage experts was simply easy. However, it was very difficult to do it without alerting the experts and powerhouses in the palace. Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment and immediately had an idea. Earth Emperor Shield. He muttered in his heart and quietly used his Earth Elemental True Essence to burrow into the ground. He controlled the power of Earth True Essence and quietly moved underground without any hindrance. He was like a fish swimming in water. In a short span of 10 breaths, he swam 100 meters underground and came to the ground of a house. The Soul Shepherd Hall assassin in the house was still meditating on the bed and didn't notice the approaching danger in the slightest. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing emerged from the wall behind the assassin. He appeared soundlessly like a ghost. At this moment, he was only a step away from the Soul Shepherd Hall assassin. He stretched out his right hand like lightning and grabbed towards the assassin's neck. Crack. Along with the sound of bones shattering, this assassin's neck was instantly broken by Ji Tianqing, and he died on the spot. Until the moment of his death, he still didn't understand what had happened. The assassin's body slowly fell down onto the bed without a sound. Blood was still flowing out from his mouth and nose. And at this moment, Ji Tianqing had already left silently. He moved another 20 steps underground and entered the next room. The black-robed assassin in this room faintly heard a light sound and revealed a puzzled expression. He had just opened his eyes. However, he didn't realize that a person had appeared out of thin air from the dark brown wall behind him. Crack. Another sound of bones shattering was heard. This assassin's neck was also broken by Ji Tianqing. He didn't even have time to scream before he died on the spot. Then, Ji Tianqing sneaked into the 3rd and 4th rooms and assassinated the remaining 2 assassins. Although the 2 assassins were alert, they didn't know what had happened. Before they could react, Ji Tianqing appeared like a ghost and silently took their lives. Ji Tianqing easily took care of the 4 assassins from the Hall of Soul Husbandry without making too much noise. He quietly left the house and returned to Yun Yao's side. Yun Yao quickly asked via voice transmission, Tianqing, have you taken care of them? Ji Tianqing nodded and replied via voice transmission, yes, all 4 Soul Shepherd Hall assassins have been killed. Then, he took Yun Yao and sneaked into the ruins on the side of the palace. He observed the defensive formation silently and thought of a way to break it. After observing for a while, he frowned doubtfully and thought to himself, the defensive formation of this palace isn't a remnant formation from the ancient times. It was set up in recent years. Strange, this is just an ordinary low-grade heaven origin formation. Could it be that the experts in this palace have very ordinary attainments in formations? Ji Tianqing was puzzled and raised his vigilance. He explained the situation to Yunyao. Then, he performed a secret formation technique and started to break the formation. The low-grade heaven origin formation was very easy for a formation grandmaster like him. It wasn't even worth mentioning. In just a few minutes, he broke a hole in the defensive formation. Swoosh! Swoosh! Ji Tianqing and Yunyao went through the hole in the formation and entered the defensive formation. Although the palace had a black iron gate, they didn't go through the gate. They went through the window of one of the rooms on the first floor and directly entered the palace. The interior of the palace was dilapidated and very old. It was full of cracks and piles of gravel and debris. The air was filled with a damp and rotten smell. It was nauseating. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both had the strength of heaven origin stage. They held their breath and quickly shuttled through the palace, searching for traces of Yen. Both of them released their spirit senses to explore the situation around. They didn't miss any room or secret room, even the underground. Not long after, they searched the entire first floor of the palace but found nothing. They just went up to the second floor of the palace and entered a spacious hall. They were about to use their spirit senses to search. At this time, Ji Tianqing suddenly saw 4 statues standing in the 4 dark corners of the hall. Each statue was more than 3 meters tall. They were dark brown all over and the carvings were lifelike. They didn't look like remnants from the ancient times. In terms of appearance, the 4 statues were all of the demon clan. Half of them were like humans and the other half were like eagles. Ji Tianqing stepped toward one of the statues and prepared to observe it closely. However, the statue suddenly moved and opened its eyes, revealing a pair of dark golden bright eyes. Chapter 653. Ji Tianqing saw that the black stone on the surface of the statue was cracking and falling to the floor. In just a few breaths, the statue completely shattered, revealing a 3-meter-tall harpy with a robust and powerful body. This demon had the head of a human and the body of an eagle. It had the wings and sharp claws of an eagle, but it also had a pair of arms similar to that of a human. It stared down at Ji Tianqing with an evil sneer in its golden eyes. "Human kid, how dare you break into the wandering soul's fortress and disturb our sleep? You are courting death." The harpies opened their sharp beaks and spoke the human language with a strange accent. At the same time, the other 3 statues in the corner of the hall cracked and showed 3 harpies with the same fierce vibes. The 4 harpies stared at Ji Tianqing and Yunyao coldly, slowly approaching the center of the hall. Yunyao was holding the cold moon sword, standing side by side with Ji Tianqing, looking around alertly. "Tianqing, this is the golden-eye winged man. It is fast and powerful. It is good at fighting. It is said that this race was wiped out 1,000 years ago. There are only a few golden-eye winged men left. I didn't expect to see 4 of them here." "Golden-eye winged men?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and casually said, "They are just 4 sky origin stage level 2 beasts. What is there to be afraid of?" He coldly stared at the golden-eye winged man and asked, 2 days ago, did the Hall of Soul Husbandry catch a human boy and keep him here?" The golden-eye winged man showed a mocking look. "Kid, what is the Hall of Soul Husbandry? I have never heard of it. As for the human boy, I have eaten him long ago. He was delicious. Since you 2 are here, I am going to have a good meal today. TSK, TSK. Although Ji Tianqing could tell that the golden-eyed winged being was lying, he was still enraged. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. "You are courting death." Ji Tianqing shouted and suddenly waved his hand to shoot out a fiery sword light toward the golden-eye winged man, Red Dragon Flash. The 10-meter-long fiery sword light lit up the spacious hall like a fiery dragon. It was about to hit the golden-eye winged man. The golden-eye winged man's pupils shrank. His body was covered with golden light, and he quickly dodged aside. However, no matter how fast he was not as fast as Ji Tianqing's red dragon flash. Bang! With a muffled sound, crimson dragon flash pierced through the chest of the golden-eyed winged man, shattering his heart and internal organs. Its 3-meter-tall body exploded into pieces of flesh and blood, scattering in the corner of the hall. Suddenly, the air smelled blood of the golden eye. The other 3 golden-eyed winged beings were smirking coldly, thinking about how to torture Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Suddenly, they saw that their companion had been killed by a sword strike. The 3 of them were stunned, and their golden eyes were filled with horror. Seizing the opportunity, Ji Tianqing used the Golden Emperor Slash and charged toward the other golden-eyed winged man with unparalleled ferocity. Yun Yao also waved her Cold Moon sword and used the Heavenly Star 5 swords. She slashed out 5 huge sword lights and attacked the golden-eye winged man on the left. The 3 golden-eye winged men finally came back to their senses and roared angrily. They flapped their wings and used a secret technique. They shot out sharp blades of light and shadow to block the attacks of the 2 people. The saber lights and sword shadows of the 2 sides clashed fiercely, creating a loud rumbling sound that reverberated in the hall. An incomparably violent shockwave fiercely struck the hall, causing huge cracks to appear on the ground and walls. The entire palace also shook violently. Ji Tianqing's golden eye slash was unstoppable. It cut through all obstacles and hit a golden-eye winged man. That golden-eye winged man was cut in half by the giant sword. His body and blood scattered on the ground. The remaining 2 golden-eye winged men were scared out of their wits by Ji Tianqing's power. They attacked twice symbolically and then retreated in a hurry. They wanted to escape from the hall. However, Ji Tianqing was determined to kill them. How could he let them escape? Water split. He released a huge sword light that was more than 10 meters long and killed a golden-eye winged man on the spot. He also smashed the entire wall of the hall. Yun Yao also used the moonlight essence. She slashed out a crescent-shaped light blade and killed another golden-eye winged man on the spot. In the blink of an eye, all 4 golden-eye winged men were killed. The hall was also torn apart. The whole palace was on the verge of collapse. Huge rocks kept falling down. These 4 golden-eye winged men are only guards. There's an even stronger mastermind behind them. They've surely been alarmed now. We have to make the best use of our time and search separately now so as to avoid any mishaps happening to Yen. Ji Tianqing was anxious in his heart and instructed Yun Yao via voice transmission. The 2 of them hurriedly left the damaged hall and moved swiftly like a gust of wind on the 2nd floor of the palace as they released their spiritual sense to search for Yen-er's whereabouts. The 2 of them acted separately and spent 100 breaths of time to search all the 100-plus rooms on the 2nd floor of the palace. However, they were unable to find Yen-er. Thus, the 2 of them hurriedly rushed up to the 3rd floor of the palace. This floor was obviously a secret place of the palace. There were only a mere 10-plus rooms and 2 secret rooms. Every room and secret room was extremely spacious. Moreover, a defensive grand formation was set up, and there were even a few human martial artists acting as guards. However, those human martial artists only had a strength at the 8th or 9th level of the origin core stage. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao used some tricks and only used 3 to 5 moves to instantly kill the guards. After they killed all the guards, the 2 of them hurriedly started searching. The defensive grand formations of the various rooms and secret rooms were capable of obstructing the detection of spiritual sense, causing their searching speed to become extremely slow. Right when the 2 of them were patiently breaking open the formation, Ji Tianqing suddenly sensed that a gloomy and obscure formidable aura was silently fleeing the palace and flying towards the outside. Want to flee? His brows raised as he emitted a cold shout, and then his figure flashed out of the palace and chased out. Swoosh! He transformed into a golden flowing light that smashed open an enormous hole in the palace wall before flying into the dim and lightless night sky. He raised his head to look ahead and saw a thin figure in a black robe carrying a little boy as it flew swiftly in the night sky 200 meters away. Bastard, Where do you think you're going? Ji Tianqing shouted out furiously with a murderous aura, and then he exploded out with vast true essence as he chased after the figure like a flowing light. Swish! In the blink of an eye, he'd caught up to the black-robed figure and stopped the black-robed figure in the sky above the ruins of the manor. Meanwhile, Ji Tianqing saw clearly that the black-robed figure was a thin and slovenly old man. His disheveled long hair covered half of his face and only revealed a pair of eyes that flickered with flames. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.